Since I done messed that up so bad. I was purposely trying to miss the baseball prediction portion.
Well, you see what I had called it, right? The series that didn't know.
Yeah. And that was appropriate. That was well named. I feel like I need to run upstairs and throw in a tie. Bill is embarrassing me, man.
I know, man. I'm looking at
I'm
Bill.
getting sick of this shit. Oh, we're early. Sorry, we ain't even have to My bad.
But who knows where you are, though? You might be in a different time zone. It might be well after dark.
That's true. It's after dark somewhere. It's after dark somewhere.
Iran.
Exactly.
Paris.
He went Stevie Wonder on his day. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Chevrolet.
Nice.
Oh, man. So, how was your trip to Philly? I know you actually did the last show from Philly, but you missed us Saturday because you were
that was the return trip. I'm actually home now. I got home. I'm just not up in the office. I'm just downstairs in the main office, as we call it. So, the trip to Philly went well. It was from a work standpoint, it was very productive. And I got a number of cheesesteaks in. Like I said, I got those each potato chips. I got some taffy. It was a nice trip.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, my taffy days is a little over with too, but so let's go to this dreaded baseball. We're
still gonna do it. We're still gonna do it. I didn't miss it.
Well, we've seen players play through pain before, and this is something that I just thought, baseball, football, whatever sport that you want to talk about takes a certain amount of courage. Now, this was something, I actually watched this inning where Morton got hit by the pitch.
Morton,
and I'm saying to myself, well, wow, he acts like that didn't even hurt. Just went on, kept on playing.
Man, adrenaline is a hell of a drug.
I'm telling you, So and then it comes out, later on that this guy is pitching on a broken tibia, and not only that, but he strikes out the last guy with a curveball. I think it was.
Yes, because he wasn't feeling anything yet. The next day, he would not have been able to replicate that feat. I mean, think about it.
The next day,
we've all played enough baseball to have been hit by a ball that was either hit or pitched or both. Yes.
Yes.
I know you certainly did. So there's that initial shock, like, oh man, that thing hit me, right? And then your body, right? Two of us have been in combat. One of us played a lot of baseball. Your body's like, did we die? No, good. And then there's this surge, right? I'm alive. I'm in combat, whatever. And you're invincible for at least a little while longer. And then when it wears off, why, God? Why?
There's questions.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's people around you that are asking the same questions, and you're like, wow, what happened now? But but I mean, now Bill, you have to correct me because I know it was the Super Bowl, the Rams against the Steelers, I believe.
Oh, you're talking about Jack Youngblood?
Yes, when he played on a broken leg. As a matter of fact, it seemed like not this. I don't know whether it's true or according to legend, but he played the whole series on a broken leg.
Oh yeah. He broke his leg weeks before the Super Bowl. Now, it should be pointed out that Jack Youngblood is a certified psychopath. There's the adrenaline was long. Well, I guess the Super Bowl, brings the Super Bowl adrenaline with it, but he had been playing in agony for a while. But remember, this is a guy pretty deep in his career. This is his first, and he's figuring probably only shot at the Super Bowl. If his leg was not actually amputated, he was going to play.
Yeah.
there's a thing, man, with and I'm going to sound like a goofball here, but I truly believe this. There is a level that you get to get to that level. You have to have a chip, a wire, this thing. That thing, right, is something that I don't have. Like I kick a table leg and, all bets are off, right? But these guys have the ability to, and maybe it's real life, it's probably focus or concentration, or maybe Bill nailed it, certified psychopath. It might just be that. But they have the ability to place pain in a place that is not nearly as significant to them as the Super Bowl or the World Series, the next out, right? And they can just place it somewhere. And there are guys who have it. I mean, Ali had it. When Joe Frazier broke his jaw with that left hook, I mean, I would have been crying for my mother. You can have a belt. I don't care about none of this. My jaw is broken. And we are pugilists. They have the ability to do this thing. To Bill's point, 3 hours later, 2 days later, they're saying words that we couldn't even say after dark. they're yelling stuff we couldn't yell after dark.
Well, you talk about Ali. What about the Ken Norton fight? What,
exactly.
Second round? Well, 10 rounds.
Right.
And I know the agony of a broken jaw. Now, that pain doesn't hit you instantly, like you said.
Nope.
But it's like once you get through that rush and the anger, then all of a sudden, I can't close my mouth. Well,
right. And the human body is ridiculous in that it will solve any problem for you. It'll make up a drug. Maybe it's called dopamine or something. It's got a name for it. I can't remember. The human body will help you out. Hey, we got to get through this fight. So I'm just going to produce this thing that's going to help you deal with a broken jaw. And your body will just do it. Later, your body's going to, you got to check. You got to cash now, bro. So it's going to be a different kind of pain later. But really, world-class athletes have that ability to do that on a level that regular dudes like me can't do it. And that explains that. He's in the World Series. He knows it's broken. His logical mind knows, because he's probably broken bones before, and you know what it feels like, whether it's a stress fracture or whatever. You know what it is. So he knows I'm done for this World Series. When I walk off this mound, limp off this mound, right? This is all I'm going to do in this. So he went as far as he could go. It's certified psychopathy. Psychopathy, is that the right way to say that, Bill? That's what it is.
Psychopathy is
psychopathy. Yes, that's what I think. That is what that is. But he's not unique in that.
And that's the big bone in your leg, I believe, right?
Right. I think it's the one we'd call our shin bone, correct?
It is right. It is the one that's right here. You can feel it right here.
Yeah.
That's the
it's
one.
Nice and flat. To break when it hits baseball.
The table leg is the one that keeps finding that table leg.
Exactly.
So, guys, we're 2-2, but Atlanta has. 1-1, but Atlanta has got that dreaded game on the road. So, even though we're 1-1, do you see any momentum here? What do you think of these two teams? Pretty, last night the Astros hit the Braves early, and wasn't nothing much the Braves could do after that. They still put 2 runs on the board, but it's been pretty evenly matched as far as the amount of runs scored. But I still think that the Braves have the advantage in pitching, Astros the advantage in hitting. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
I'm gonna let Bill have all this time. I've decided I don't predict baseball anymore. I'm done. No, I'm done. I am not gonna sit here and act like I know. I do know a lot about baseball, bro. I kind of feel like it, but yeah, I'm gonna let Bill have this. I think I'm just gonna enjoy this. I'm done being a prognosticator. I'm just gonna be a fan and enjoy whatever's left, because it's really good baseball. That I will say, and I feel comfortable. Yes. It's very good baseball, and if you're a fan of baseball, just enjoy it. I have no rooting interest in either team. Tigers are long gone. Right. I'm just gonna enjoy watching. You're not okie doking me into predicting nothing else. I know that.
We'll see what it's 3.
Yeah, right, exactly. But game 7, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Maybe maybe when it's 3-2. But Bill, what you think?
For once again, as I said previously, when the last time I decided to roll with the Braves, I have no particularly compelling thing I can point to in terms of a particular metric, a particular thing I found analytically to say this is the better team. It's just once again I don't trust my gut, but nonetheless, my gut is saying, my very untrustworthy gut is saying to go with the Braves. Now, what I will say, and we've always like tripped over our feet 14 different ways already. These are two teams that are built similarly in a lot of ways, right? They have a lot of similar strengths and somewhat similar weaknesses, though I would agree with you that certainly the greater ability to hit, extra base hits, home runs definitely belongs to the Astros. They are built more like a American League team. Now, that's not quite as great a distinction as it used to be,
Right.
in the 40s and 30s and 50s and really until the last 20 or so years, you could see, oh, this team looks like an American League. Oh, this team looks like a National League. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, those 1980s Cardinals were like, they should have frozen all those people in, what was it, carbonite, whatever they put Han Solo in, and said, this is what a National League team looks like, right? Ozzie Smith, Willie McGee, right? It's all these guys who look vaguely like point guards, and they can all run and field, and they can hit the occasional double. They'll definitely get you they'll stretch singles. They're getting the third. They're scoring on singles from second base. They're stealing bases. They're all that cool stuff. And Ken, what was the white guy that got super hot that year? Third baseman, I think. Huff, something like that. It was a German last name. What was his name? I could see him in my mind.
For the Cardinals? What year?
Yeah. What year?
No.
Like the late 80s, or early 90s, they won the World Series. And this guy, he had an okay career, but he was unbelievable during this particular World Series. Probably hit like 430 something with like runs. I think I'm almost certain he was a third baseman.
Yeah, they were a walking Tom and Mansky video. They were sound fundamentally. They moved the runners.
Fundamentally, that's what they were.
Did all the stuff
that
National League teams do. Yeah.
Yep. and it was so pervasive that the American League team in the same state started to look like them. So they had almost two National League teams because the 80s Royals looked like a National League team, acted like a National League team, right? Dick Hauser, right, and all those guys, Amos Otis. And, I mean, if they had switched uniforms with the Cardinals, it would have taken you a while to figure out that they were not actually the Cardinals. George Brett, I guess, except for that. Yeah. Except for George Brett. Other than that, they could have easily for a National League team. Now it's not as distinct, right? There's so much sort of cross-pollination other than the DH. But I don't know. I just kind of have this feeling that somebody, those people that you almost barely know the names of are going to come up big for the Braves. Those, my thing, blue guys. Hey, who knew that Biff Pocorobo was going to come through in the clutch? Dent, right? Those kind of guys.
Are you talking about the Zamboni Ken Wrights? Is that who you're talking about?
Say his name again?
Wrights. Reitz or Wrights. His nickname was the Zamboni. He's a third baseman for the Cardinals in the 80s. I was trying to remember, so I had to look it up, I'll be honest.
I know it was something German. I keep thinking, did he get stupid hot in some World Series and hit like 400 or something?
Yeah, it looks like he hit 454 in a World Series.
That's the guy.
Yeah,
that's the guy. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So all that means Bill doesn't know who's going to win this World Series either, but he's enjoying watching the baseball.
It tells you they do their lying.
No, I will admit that this is probably the first time that I've watched games 1 and 2 of the World Series all the way through. Usually I can find something that's but this was rather exciting. You had a little drama here and there. I mean, it was a pretty good series. So
Yeah.
it wasn't quite like some of the old ones. But hey, right now it's two games, one game apiece, and you know right now I'm looking forward to game three. So. Guys, we talk about the Rooney Rule and all that stuff, and we're gonna get to the Rooney Rule in a little bit. But is it time for the chop to go? I heard your side there,
Yeah,
Demetrius.
I don't know. If he wants to go first, he can. My opinion on this is going to be probably predictable. I'll go ahead and get mine out of the way. I live by a pretty simple rule. I am not always the person in a position to tell you if something is offensive. But if I understand someone else is offended, by definition, it's offensive. You don't have to offend me to be offensive. And I think people get confused. I don't find it offensive. That's not the point, right? That's never the point. If you can take yourself out of your own shoes, look at the perspective of another human being, and though that person or that group of people says, yeah, we find this offensive. By every definition that should matter, it is offensive. And you shouldn't do it anymore. Now, to answer this question, I'm not an indigenous person, right? So I can't be the one who says it must go. That's my other rule. That's not for me. There's some stuff that the three of us deal with that I can tell you has to go. No problem, because it has impacted all three of our lives. We have heard it our entire lives. We know what it means to the history of people that look like us. I struggle saying, my guess is that this is offensive to quite a few people. And I would say that the two people I know well who are still okay with me using the term Native American, but again, that falls into my own situation. I guess some people think that's offensive. They tell me they are offended by it. It is because their thing is different than our thing. And maybe it's the same. It goes back to you're some kind of animal who doesn't have control of your sensibilities and you will just chop people's heads. It goes to a very ugly place that may or may not even be true about the history of their people. It could just be fiction that we've been fed our whole lives. So my simple rule is that if somebody, a reasonable person, finds it offensive, then it's offensive. So yes, my answer to it is it should go. I don't really care about the team or Atlanta. It doesn't even belong in Atlanta, by the way. Y'all brought that from the wall. There's so many reasons they need to do that. But I went on longer than I thought, but that's my general comment. If this is not offensive to me, but I know it's offensive to somebody, and that's why it's got to go.
Well, like you said, this is not something that originally started in Atlanta. This was a Milwaukee thing.
In Boston before that.
Yeah.
If you want to,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
of all places,
right. Just ironically, Bill's eyes rolled on himself when he realized it's Boston. This started in Boston. It's like, oh yeah, now it makes sense.
Well, I mean, hey, if you connected with the, not the first Thanksgiving, because I don't know,
or as we like to call it, the first Thanksgiving. But yes,
right, the first heist.
What I'm thinking is that the first Thanksgiving you shared because you had no choice, you didn't know any better. The second Thanksgiving, after you learned a little bit, you took a little bit more. By the third Thanksgiving, like you said, it became a whole different holiday. But I'll get into my version of American history a little bit later on.
Do that podcast. Should we even celebrate that?
I think we should celebrate actually the making of wool. That's what went into blankets, right? Smallpox. I mean, wool spread so many germs. Well, that's just yeah.
Bill, your thoughts on the chop?
So it's funny because I started thinking about this when we were talking to. I mentioned we had Dave Zirin on another show right before this one for Nuts and Bolts Sports, and Dave Zirin is one of the best writers about the intersection between culture, sports, and politics. least doing it right now. He's one of the best. And, his book, The Kaepernick Effect, I highly recommend it. If you don't already own it, fix that. It's one of the better books on, and it gives you hope because he really focused on talking to a lot of young athletes, college and high school athletes, and how they had manifested their ability to try to speak truth to power and things like that in a way that we often don't give young people credit for. But to the question, it's story time with Bill. So when I finished my obligation to the United States Army and was decided what to do with my life next, I started applying to graduate schools and got accepted to a few of them. And I was trying to figure out, where I should go and what I should do, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up going to the University of Illinois. And not long after I got there, people started talking to me about things. I met a man named Captain Barry Romo, a name that undoubtedly James. And he started talking to me about my experiences and all kinds of other stuff. And before I knew it, I was an activist. And I met a bunch of other people. And one of the people I met was a woman named Charlene Teeters. And Charlene is Seattle and Nisqually, if I remember correctly, her background and lineage. And she was in a Master of Fine Arts program at the University of Illinois, and she was highly perturbed. Now, she's a very calm and almost placid kind of presence and a beautiful, wonderful spirit. But she had a small child, and she was having to answer questions about some of the images that her child was exposed to at the University of Illinois campus, where she was. Now, people always say, well, authenticity and respectful and stuff like that, but they're forgetting the sort of, I guess you could call it ancillary or collateral damage or whatever that comes along with these things. Because what happens is when you have these Native American mascots, these Native American images, these Native American celebrations or whatever, is that you have other teams, other schools, right? So if you have the horns up at Texas, now you have the horns down at Oklahoma. So when instead of it being Bevo and some horns, when it becomes a human being, because that's what Native Americans are, now what is the person doing, right? So in their little, signs or the little whatevers, the little chants or whatever, they're saying stuff about scalping them and squaws and this and that. And then you've got people putting Native American images on toilet paper that they wipe their butts with, right? I got a hold of some, I still have it somewhere, right? That they were selling on campus at University of Iowa and other places. And then you add to that there was a bar that I will not give a free plug to, but right in the center part of campus that its main name was whatever its main name was, which I won't say, but I very, very much remember. But then the sort of subtitle was Home of the Drinking Illini. Now, if you think about the effect and history of alcohol on Native people, on indigenous people in North America, you can't then say we're being respectful, we're paying homage, and then do this at the same time. You pick a lane, right? You can't do both. Yep. So I became part of a movement to get rid of this whole mascot. And the other thing that was very bothersome is that it was always some, white frat kid, right? It was always some they put into the buckskins and whatever that were so authentic. Now, they weren't authentic to the Illini people because the Illini had been wiped out, right? There are none and have not been any for almost 200. Well, now I guess, probably right about 200 years. They were a victim of what we now know as the French and Indian War, and they backed the wrong horse, right? Picking the French made perfect sense because the French weren't putting up all these towns and settlements. They were just at trading posts and the occasional Catholic mission. So it's like, well, these, they didn't use the term footprint probably, but these particular white folks, if we have to pick a set of white folks, This particular set of white folks have a much smaller footprint than this set. So we're going to back this setting against the others in this war. I swear to God, this is coming to a point. And we're here in this place named for these people that got wiped out, right? I mean, I know we live in the death of irony, right? A post-irony age, but come on. So when I'm this kid that grows up in North Carolina and Virginia, and obviously the Carolina Panthers were not in existence. So the Washington football team, which is not called the Washington football team at the time, their images and their whatevers are everywhere where I'm growing up, right? People dress up as whatever, right? To games and for Halloween and for whatever, sometimes just to sit around their own houses. It was, crazy people. But you have all this stuff around. And once again, once that genie's out of the bottle, right? Now, when you're playing your rivals, they're taking those images and twisting them and doing things with them, right? And these are people. These are human beings. So when eventually I began to pay attention to the history of all these other franchises that had these images and what these images have looked like not all that long ago, I'd like to remind some of you, once again, some of us are old enough to remember what the old, Charlie, whatever the name they slapped on them, looked like, right? It was basically just a native or indigenous version of Samba, right? Wasn't that long ago? Yep. We're not going way back. I'm talking about in my lifetime. I'm not talking about 100 years ago. I'm talking about 50 or less than 50 years ago. And so when they cleaned it up, like they did when they gave Aunt Jemima a perm in the late 70s, or when they, made Uncle Ben a little lighter and made his smile large, but not, quite so large, right? Kind of, right? Let's just take some of the racism out of it. Not all of it, just enough. Where people are asking about the chop. So think about the chop is saying, the message it sends. And then these people who have no connection other than, this particular image, this mascot, this symbol, whatever that's attached to this team that they care about. Whether it be at Florida State, in Florida State, it's a slightly more complicated issue because they have done a slightly better job of actually taking in actual input from the Seminole people, which is not what's happened in Washington, despite what Dan Snyder may have told you. Oh my God, I hope we get into Dan Snyder tonight. But we have this thing that people do, and it's basically mindless. They're not thinking about what they're doing. I promise you they're not. If someone said, what exactly are you doing right now? Right? They would have trouble even explaining it. It's reflexive. It's not even in this part of the brain. It's in this part. You can't see it, but there's a little, that little knot back here, right? It's in that reptilian brain. They're not even truly aware of what they're doing. It's mindless. It's programmed into them. And nobody's counter-programmed them yet. This is insidious because it leads to them not thinking it's anything bad. And they'll tell you that with a straight face and because they think that's the truth. What they don't understand and can't understand, at least not yet, is what all those things tie into, what all those things bring back, what all those things, there's such a thing as history. There is. Despite all of our attempts to erase it, there is such a thing as history. And when you're doing these things, you are hearkening back to the kinds of hatreds and distrust of these people that were used to justify massacres, that were used to justify, as was mentioned earlier, biological warfare, starvation, and attempted genocide. And if you don't see the connection, that's only because, once again, you're not using this part, you're using this part, the little knot part. You got all this other brain to use, but you're not even connecting it to what you're doing. That's what I think.
Yeah, Bill,
well said. Well said.
My show on Black Conservative starts Monday. Anyway, okay. Wow, I'm thinking all kinds of things here, about that little knot back there, white supremacists, Nazis, all kinds of things are going through my mind. But anyway, this is not quite the show for that. So let's talk about some other things. NBA. Yeah, let's talk about some NBA. So, Bill, I'm going to let you. You wanted to talk about Snyder, so I'm going to let you and talk about Dan Snyder for a moment before we start getting into some of the other things. Evidently, you have a rant saved back there. Do you want to keep it for the? Do you want to keep it for the NFL?
I can save it. I will save it until the proper time. Trust me, that rant's not going to place.
Oh, okay. So let's move on here to the NBA. James Harden says that he's not a fan of the new Harden rule. What about you guys? What do you think, Demetrius?
It is still funny, even though it's also absurd. It does not take away from the funny. Of course you're not. But here's the thing: that league, more than any other league. Now the NFL prints money. Their business model with the hard cap is a money machine. But the NBA, as a league, has always been the one most closely connected to its demo. They know who watches their games. They know who buys jerseys and sneakers, and they get it. And the things that James Harden and others have been doing has uglied up the game. And social media has told the committee or whether it was Adam Silver singularly, someone, it's like, wait, we're getting a lot of feedback that this stuff is making the game ugly, boring, whatever, something that the customer doesn't like. And that's all this is. This is a customer feedback survey that says when that guy jumps into the other guy and throws it, that's bad. That's not basketball. That's nonsense. Nobody exemplifies that nonsense more than James Harden. So calling it the Harden rule is not out of line at all. A lot of other guys do it, but it's just ugly, and it's not what they want their product to look like. It is not. It is like it's a customer feedback survey, and they're hearing that's crap. We don't like it. Stop doing it. And the way they do it, they just make a simple rule change. And guess what? Good players adjust. They always have. Rule changes never affect really good players or really good teams because they're really good. So if this is what you have been using to carry yourself, James Harden, time for you to step up and show us you were more than. And he is. He's super uber talented. He'll get over this, and he'll move on. He'll still be who he should be. But this is about they always protect the product. The Shield protects their image better than anybody else. The association, they protect the product better than anybody else. And that's what this is. This is protecting your product based on customer feedback.
And this is coming from a numbers man.
Exactly.
So when I go to my bookie, I can say Demetrius said.
As long as it's not about baseball, you're probably all right. You're probably all right.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, so in a related story, a spokes rat from the National Association of Rats says they are very much against rat poison.
Right.
So it turns out that when something has been introduced that is going to greatly disadvantage a particular species, or in this case, player, they're against the thing that disadvantage it. That is a disadvantage to them. Soccer. Here's what I will say. I like how he kept testing it, though, right? He wanted to for sure. You're not going to call this? I'm going to jump into this dude one more time just to be certain. Huh, really? Huh. All right. Like, because I think the first couple of times, like, maybe they just missed that. You know, it was like, huh.
Maybe they forgot who I am, right?
Right. There was some of that. There was definitely some of that in there, you know? So there was a little bit of that. And here's the thing. I think ironically it's going to make him a better player when he does it.
It should. Yeah.
Because he's so good. He doesn't need this crap. He really doesn't. And he can get enough legitimate fouls. He'll get to the line plenty. You know, people are going to foul him anyway. It's not like he needs to create the fouls.
Right.
They'll-
Right.
I don't know if you're listening, James. Trust me, you'll get fouled plenty just playing basketball.
Yep.
People will foul you. I have it on good authority that you will still get fouled.
Yes.
So, how many points less do you think he's going to score this season?
Not many. This is just instead of doing that
20?
now.
Okay, I'll put it. Okay, yeah, all right. We'll wait till the All-Star break.
Yeah. Let's check at the All-Star break. Good call. Let's get some data points. You know, I'm gonna go all quality geek on you. I'm gonna need some data points on this. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna be that impactful.
Nope.
Okay, all right. Like I said, we'll address it again at the end of at the All-Star break. So, oh my goodness, you know, before I start this, I want you to think about this.
I love it.
230 to 0.
Yeah.
200. Do you know how many seasons that would be? 230 to 0. Okay. Anyway, let's get to the question. Okay. So the Lakers blow a 26-point lead. And this is where that 230 to 0 comes in, because before last night, this is what they were when they had a 26-point or more lead. Introduce Russell Westbrook, please. Fanfare. Anyway, okay. So now Westbrook gets ejected with about 5 seconds left in the game because a young rookie intercepts a pass and takes it in for a dunk.
Yep.
And the winless OKC Thunder beat the Lakers by 5 points. Now, down through Russell's career, we've talked about, those Bill, I think you had an expression for him, those extra points and rebounds that the team kind of gifts to him to make sure that he gets to that triple double, and
I don't know if they go as far as gift them, but late in games.
Yeah,
late in games.
Right.
Yeah, late in games. If a game's decided and he needs an assist or he needs a rebound or whatever, you can tell guys aren't exactly doing everything possible to stop him. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Right.
And
as long as the game's been decided.
Last night, he also had a quadruple double because he had 10 turnovers too.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
I don't think it works. I don't think it works like that.
What I call a Jameis Winston triple double. Yes.
Okay. So now this has been LeBron's second game out with I guess it's what is it, an ankle or a hip? One of them, I think it's the ankle. Should the Lakers be concerned? I mean, when Russ scores, they lose. When I know that it's only a few games into the season, but just looking at the chemistry, I mean, it's kind of one of those WTF is going on. Bill?
Well, I feel like I've said a lot of these things before. So, as we said, one of the oldest teams in the NBA looked at its roster and said, let's go older, right? We talked about this. And why that can sometimes not always be the best possible thing to do. When your team, there's a certain point where your team is so old or old enough, or how do you put it, that you can pencil in, or whatever term you want to use. You understand there's going to be some days when people are just going to start physically breaking down on you. And added to that, there are also some things I mean, we haven't gotten deep into the season yet, so you're not seeing much of it. But these guys will need more rest. They're going to need to be, careful and hang out. You're going to earn your money this year as the Lakers head coach because you have such an old roster. To the Darius Bazley incident, it was funny to me. Well, not funny, but interesting to me because the NBA generally doesn't have nearly as many unwritten rules as the other sports, particularly baseball. Obviously, leader in the clubhouse and probably never to be overtaken in the unwritten rule category. Football, a distant second, and then basketball. Well, hockey's probably up there too. I just don't know as much about hockey. Yeah. It seems like kind of sport. There's probably a lot of unwritten rules. I just don't know them. But basketball, relatively loosey-goosey-ish as our major sports go. There's a few things you're not supposed to do, but generally, guys can just go out and play. They don't mind if you shimmy, talk a little trash. Like, there's no problem with that. Like, you don't have to worry about somebody throwing at your head because you celebrated, right? But for some reason, this particular time, when this particular player caught a this is not a great, this is a terrible inbound pass, right? I mean, it was a play that was there to be made only because of a certain amount of laziness and incompetence, quite frankly, by the Lakers. And I mean, I guess you could say he was supposed to just dribble the clock out. I mean, I don't know. Did that 2 points matter? I mean, I guess to certain people in certain, particular industries, I guess maybe, but outside of somebody who's got that kind of interest in the game, I'm not sure what that 2 points was supposed to mean. And for some reason, and we talked about this, Russ is a super proud man. I mean, he's super proud. I get that. And uber competitive. I definitely get that. But for him to be that offended about that play this early in the season, like, you're going to save some. You're going to run out of rage if you keep this up. Well, maybe not. No, he probably has more than enough rage. But this is going to be a long season for a bunch of older basketball players. And I would be directing my energy towards making sure we're executing all the way through the end of games, even games we're not going to win. That, to me, seems to be the better focus.
Yeah, I think I just got 3 quick points because one, Russ will never run out of rage. How dare you? What the hell are we talking about? 2, if something happens 230 times in 230 opportunities, statistical probability says, you're due. Right? I'm going to go with that. It was bound to happen. But more than anything, I recall us talking when they made the trade, and Bill and I, almost to the point of mockery, talked about Father Time never losing. And I mean, I can almost think of a handful of jokes we cracked. Their simple concern. Your question is, should the Laker fans be concerned? The answer was yes. Then we had a contingent yes. Worry about injury. Worry about missed games because of injury, because you guys are, as Bill said, you looked at your roster and said, we're kind of old. You know what's a good idea? And I remember Bill doing this because he snapped his hands and laughed. Let's get older. Right? Right. That's the thing. So yeah, they should be concerned because they're going to deal with this all year. Somebody's going to be hurt all the time. And so they're never going to truly have continuity. As far as Russ is just Russ. There's no rhyme or reason to when Russ goes off. He might go off to his grandmother on Thanksgiving if the potatoes aren't right. We don't know. There's no rhyme or reason to Russ going off. Laker fans should be concerned about the age of their roster, and Father Time is unbeaten. They're going to deal with injuries all year. You'll just see where you are in April. And I think our consensus was, if they're healthy in April, I like their chances. But last year, I picked the Phoenix Suns in the first round for one reason. They're old and they're going to be not healthy. Same thing this year, multiply it by another guy. That's all it is.
Right.
Okay, well, like you said, they should be concerned. Definitely. Old and like you said, Father Time. I don't see other than LeBron. There's another TB12 in basketball. I don't believe it. I haven't seen him yet. So the Bulls start out undefeated. I know it's early, so I'm going to ask you guys uh, well, Demetrius, I know you probably watch more the Pistons games, but anyway, since you're both in Chicago,
No, but the good news is 2 of the Bulls wins were against the Pistons, and I saw both games. So I happen to see both of those games.
okay, so is this an example of team chemistry, or are the Bulls legit?
Those 2 things can both exist.
Okay.
I'm gonna say I like what I see, but I also know that there's a team in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There is a team in Philadelphia, and there's a team-ish in Brooklyn, New York. And I'm not. I feel strange using the word team to describe that group of people, and I'm not sleeping on the guys in Miami, Florida. So I think the Bulls are good. I think their wins have come against not the best teams, including my very own Pistons. Yep. I don't think they're as good as any of the 4 teams I named. So I don't even know if that's answering your question. I think they made some great moves. I like how Lonzo's playing. I like the Bulls. I don't like them as much as those other 4 teams. That's the best I can give you.
Bill, what do you think?
As was mentioned, the answer is yes to your question. Yeah. So yes. And are they legit in terms of? I think they can finish as high as 3rd. In fact, I think that's why I picked them. I picked them to finish 3rd in the East. Are they as good as? They're going to outplay some teams that are better than them. Yeah. At least in part because of. Chemistry is part of it. Chemistry does matter. Like we sometimes poo-poo it, but we've all seen it. Teams that are just loaded, but their chemistry is crap.
Yeah, and
they can even, get a decent season together. Maybe even win one playoff series against, a team that's, demonstrably, less talented. But then they face a team that's slightly less talented, but playing together and more coherent and cohesive, and they start to fray at the edges. And even if they survive, right, the wear and tear and the pull and the stress and the turning spells doom when they face the next team, which is about even with them in talent. If they somehow survive, sometimes they don't even survive that. Sometimes playing that team that's only slightly less talented than them is enough to knock them out. The Bulls are exactly the kind of team that team like that team-ish you just mentioned doesn't want to see, right? Right. That's a nightmare for them. All the things that they don't want to see in another team is there in the Bulls, right? A team that's unselfish, a team that's energetic, a team that does the little things. And yeah, they have a legitimate superstar. They have a guy who's maybe headed in that direction, but no, they don't have a single guy on the team who's a legit superstar. There's not a single guy on the team that a casual basketball fan says, "Oh yeah, him," right? There are guys that serious basketball fans say, "Oh yeah, him," right? Yeah. Yeah. And there's guys that people who maybe watched the slam dunk competition a few years ago, "Oh, that's that guy that won the slam dunk competition a few years ago," not realizing that he's now a very different player from that guy who that was basically what he was good for in those days. And now he's a legit all around, can do a little bit of everything and a couple of things. Mm-hmm. Player.
Exactly.
The construction of the team is interesting, fascinating. And I think that are they still a couple of pieces away? Yes. I mean, to be honest, this team, it still is a couple of pieces away from being a team that can legitimately win it all in the East and be a threat to somebody in the West. They're not that team yet. But they could get there. Now, I want to, first give some flowers to the front office, who so far made this happen. But this is where it gets really hard, right? Getting to this point is not easy, but it's easier. It's easier. You get, it's getting up to the steps, ringing the doorbell. Now you're meeting your girlfriend's dad. Now it gets hard, right? Imagine making up the steps. You're measuring the doorbell. Now you're meeting, Mr.
Giannis. Giannis opens the door. What do you do now?
When he opens the door, right? Now it really is on. They're not quite that team yet. Right. But like I said, I think they're heading in the right direction. I mean, look at where you mentioned Milwaukee. Look at where they were 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna. No, I'm not ready to put them quite in that carriage yet. But yeah, it's possible. Fourth in the East.
I'm not ready to put them quite there yet, but they're closer than people realize. Than most people realize.
And use a good term, team chemistry. That is a good term. They have that. They got a bunch of Bill Carroll glue guys on that squad. They need that piece, that other piece that can carry them. Now, too bad they can't go get Jimmy Butler back, but they are so wingy, athletic-y. If I can remember Bill's term from a month ago, twitchy, bendy, slinky, or something like that. They're all those things.
They got a bunch of those kids. Yes.
Yeah.
So who finishes higher, the Hawks or the Bulls? Demetrius?
It's more of a question than you think. I am one who.
Well, the reason why I asked this was because you went through your top four,
right,
and the Hawks weren't there.
Right.
Bill put the Bulls in the top three.
Right.
So I have to assume that he doesn't have the Bulls ranked number 1 or number 2.
Right.
I do not.
I actually think they'll be right there battling Atlanta for 5, and maybe somebody else that I'm forgetting for 5. I still believe until you show me the Bucks have the best complementary group that I love it. They got the superstar. They got glue superstar or glue guy between glue and superstar. 2 of those guys, true glue guys, and they got a great coach.
Right. They have the superstar. They have the glooper star, and then
exactly. Yeah. So I still like Milwaukee. I just have no idea what's happening in Brooklyn. I don't know. I know they got talent, but you never know, right? Philly is still there, and they're still. So to answer your question, wow, it's a great question. I'm just going to give you credit for the question because I don't really know. If you force me to, I'm going to take Atlanta on the strength of they have the best player. They have the best player. I don't even know if that's a good way to do it because I believe the 2004 Pistons were the epitome of a team. They were the epitome of a team, and I love that, right? They have the ability to be something like that, but they need someone to step up because even though that was a team, they had Rasheed Wallace, they had Ben Wallace, they had Chauncey Big Shot, right? I say Atlanta now. Atlanta's been there. They got the superstar. I'm going to go with Atlanta. Great question, though.
Yeah.
Bill? Yeah. What do you think, Bill?
I would not be shocked if Atlanta ended up having a better season than the Heat and a better season than the aforementioned team in Team-ish collection of guys who play basketball together with each other sometimes. So I have no problem saying I could see the Hawks having a better season than those 2. And I'm with you. I mean, I think that I think 1 and 2, not they're going to run away and hide exactly, but I think that there'll be some space there, some space between 1, some space between 2, and a space between 2 and, but 3, 4, and 5,
right there. Yep.
3 wide at third, like Talladega, 3 wide. I mean, they're going to be swapping, right, drafting off each other. Like, I'm not kidding. That should be that 3, 4, 5 race. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Demetrius, this next question is, of course, directed to you because I do a little fantasy basketball. So I thought it might be a good strategy to take a guy named Katie and put him on my bench, and I could pick up an extra player until he was, So right now, I'm looking at young point guard, young rookie named Killian Hayes.
Killian Hayes.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little about Killian and the Pistons and what's going on, and when's Katie coming back, man?
So first of all, we're gonna stop calling Cade Cunningham Katie. Okay. We're gonna do that. I have to do it. I generally just enjoy that stuff. It's not a big deal, but this is the number 1 pick for my favorite team. He goes by Cade. So the question is about Killian Hayes, who I really like, who got a not a bum rap last year. it's a good way of bum rap. So he's their number 1 pick at 7. They had 2 other first-round picks. He struggled with the injury for most of the year. And the other 2 guys, Isaiah Stewart and Sadiq Bey, balled out. Both all rookies. So people got confused and thought, well, Killian Hayes must be a bust or a bum. No. Leg injuries in basketball are a little bit of a big deal. Like pretty much everything you do. They're being really, really patient with Killian Hayes.
Yep.
They envision, and so do I, this backcourt, this interchangeable backcourt. And it's not just the 2 of them. The 2 of them are the centerpiece. They can both play on the ball or off the ball. And you can roll guys like Frank Jackson or Saban Lee or let somebody else come up and play the off guard. They can play small lineups with Jeremy Grant and Josh Jackson, right, with these 2 guys, because Cade is legitimately big enough that you could play him at small forward if you want. You can have Frank Jackson, Killian Hayes, and Cade Cunningham on the floor at the same time. So what they see is so to your question, they're being very patient with him, and they should be, because this is a long game. I've talked about this, and it's all 4 sports in Detroit right now. The hockey team is building. They're building. The baseball team, baseball takes longer. Baseball takes a lot longer, but they're building. You know how I feel about the Gridiron Heroes. That's a 2023 special event. That's like that 3-night New Edition documentary. You can't tell that story in 1 2-hour night. You got to stretch that thing over 3 nights because you got to cover everything. The Lions will be there in 23. The Pistons will get there the fastest. They'll get into the dance of the playoff area around 8 this year, and then next year, because they've managed to cap well, and Blake Griffin's $31 million falls off the books. So they're going to sign somebody. That's the key. They've been building young talent through the draft. Last year's draft was great. Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and Killian Hayes. That's your foundation. You take Cade number 1 this year. Luka Garza look friendlier than we think. And quiet, nice signings like Frank Jackson, Kelly Olynyk. Jeremy Grant is a star in this league and nobody knows it. And Jeremy Grant can play basketball well. And I just miss him. Oh, I like Josh Jackson. I like what he's bringing. So Troy Weaver is doing this right. Be patient, be smart. We don't need Killian Hayes to be or do anything this year except grow. That's what he needs to do, is grow. When Blake's 30 mil comes off the cap, we're going shopping. We're going shopping next July. And next year's team, we're going to have some sports cribs that are dedicated to the Pistons next year. Because that's it. They'll have they'll have glue guys, they'll have young dudes getting better, and they will be a piece away. They will. And I'm excited about it. So Smart, there's no need to rush him back. You need him to be 100%. Same thing with Cade. And when this gets to where it needs to be, it's going to be really nice to watch.
Bill, while we were talking about Detroit and the Pistons there, I thought about the Heat, and once again talking about patience, but the new addition, Mr. Kyle Lowry. How long do you think it's going to be for them to work out the chemistry between him and Jimmy Butler, or is Jimmy Butler going to take him to the woodshed?
Well, once again, yes.
Right, exactly.
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
Part of them working out the chemistry will be Jimmy Butler and his special brand of team building.
You don't work out chemistry with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler works out chemistry with you. That's how that happens.
Correct. 100%. Claro que sí, as they would say in Espanol. Yes. There will be some communication. There'll be open communication. There'll be things will be made clear. Jimmy Butler is very good at communicating expectations. And the difference between some of the other people that took exception to it, other places he's been, is that I believe Kyle Lowry I hate to say things like he wants to win because they all want to win, but Kyle Lowry has been to the mountaintop, right? And once you've been to the mountaintop, it's addictive. And now every time you don't win one, it bothers you. Like when you've never been, everybody wants to win, but you can't really miss what you've never had. But Kyle Lowry's been there. Kyle Lowry stood there with the confetti falling down, right? And having to put on goggles when you go into your locker room and all that stuff. That's something that's with you. And now you're like, what do I have to do to get that again? Dealing with Jimmy Butler, then I'll deal with Jimmy Butler. So, yes, is the answer. That yes, Jimmy Butler, he will have some air clearing and heart to heart and soul to soul and maybe even chest to chest. But the great thing about a guy like Jimmy Butler is all of the stuff, even when it gets a tad extra, is actually still about winning. None of it's about him just being extra. He's not being extra just to be extra. He's being extra because he thinks it's going to help us win. He really believes that. He believes that when I do these things and I say these things and I say, I'm going to take this kid we just brought up from the G League and that guy who's kind of working his way back from injury and this guy over here and that guy who's actually one of the trainers and take on the starting five and beat him, he thinks that's something that's going to force people to pull it together and get better. He's not just doing that to show off. So he's not for everyone. I think that's been established. But if you're the right place, you have the right kind of culture. And of course, Pat Riley loves Jimmy Butler. Like it really reminds him of his old Knicks guys. Like, oh man,
exactly.
This guy's kind of like the guys he's have with the Knicks, right? He's like a better version of John Starks. So
exactly.
These guys, right? And if you're on the right side of them, you love them. If you're on the wrong side of them, But this guy, I mean, he really doesn't care about all that other stuff. He just wants to win. He doesn't care about your feelings. He doesn't care about how you think, what you think of him or how you feel about him. Or no, he just wants to win. So I still think they're another piece away too. But I think that they're going to be a real annoyance. You know, yeah. I think they're probably the number 5 team in the East. But they're going to beat a lot of good teams, and they're going to be no fun in the playoffs.
They scare the hell out of somebody in the first round. Yeah.
Oh, I do not want to see them in the playoffs at all. I mean, that's a yuck. Give me someone else. You know what I mean? Like that's not the team you want to see. First off.
Okay, so now let's see. Now we have either the Hawks or the Heat at number 5. So, Bill, I'm going to go by your predictions. The Heat at number 3, right? When they be
no, I don't have the Heat then.
No.
I had the Bulls.
I mean, the Bulls. Excuse me. Yeah. The Bulls at number 3. That would match them up with number 5.
Yes. The Heat? No, 6. 3-6.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say it's 3-6. Yeah. Okay.
4-5. Yeah, 3-6.
So 4-5, 3-6. Yep.
So 4-5 would be the Heat and the Hawks.
Oh, woo!
That's a nice series.
Ready as the
Flying nice series.
Lois used to say, "Woo! That's gonna be something."
That's a good series.
Just a few little productions there, but now this is I'm proud of myself the way I phrased this question here. You'd be surprised how long it took me to. But anyway, okay. So let's get to it here. Let's see. How did this go? Okay. Let's round out our NBA discussion with the Nets. Starting out a flat 2 and 3 without flat Earth. So who's going to be the glue guy to make this question a moot point? You can pick whoever you choose.
I guess I'm starting that then, since we lost Bill briefly. Hopefully it's briefly. I'm going to start off and say it would be nice if it was just one glue guy, but I don't think that's going to cut it. I think this is a case where you're going to need 2 glue guys. You're going to need two guys to both step up their performance. First guy is Joe Harris. Joe Harris is going to need to turn into a consistent 14-8 guy. Not every 3 games. He needs to be Joe Harris is going to have to be every game 14-8 guy. If he can do that on a somewhat consistent basis. And so the second half of my answer is Patrick Sammy Mills, right? they both set Patty Mills and Joe Harris have to together make up World B flat. And I think that there's a degree of that can happen. If you're getting 14-8 consistently from Joe Harris, there are nights where Patty Mills can get you 22 if you need it. There are nights where Patty Mills can get you 9, but he'll get you 11 assists. That's what they have to do. There's no one guy. The definition of a Bill Carroll glue guy is exactly this, is we can count on you to give us whatever it is. And it might be a Ben Wallace, 11 points, 21 rebounds. it might be 12 and 8. For Joe Harris, it needs to be about 14 and 8. For Patty Mills, it needs to be on a random night where neither of these other two guys goes off. You got to be the guy. You got to give me 22, 24. Some nights, one out of every 7 nights, Patty Mills got to get you 24, 25 points to make up for just, one of those guys gets in foul trouble. One of those guys needs to load manage or whatever the nonsense is that Harden or Durant can't do what they need to do. Patty's got to do the scoring. Joe Harris has got to just be pencil in 14 and 8 every night. If they do that, those are your combo glue guys that make you not think about World B. If it's possible to not think about him, It's possible because they got guys on that team that can do it. Those are the two guys specifically. Some partly because of the position they play, right? They play a position comparable to him and they can do what he does. But for Patty Mills, it's the game. Patty Mills has a game that can be something close to what World B is on certain nights. And then Joe Harris has got to be the true glue. So I think a combination of Patty Mills and Joe Harris.
I picked up Joe Harris as my substitute until Kaidi gets off of did you say Kaidi? How did you pronounce it?
Cade.
Until Cade gets off of the IR. So
yeah,
hopefully we'll see how that
You'll
works.
have Cade soon. Cade will be back within the week.
Bill?
Well, I'm a big Patrick Sammy Mills, right? Fan and have been for a while. Now, he's now on his highest scoring pace of his career. He's averaging 12.4. And to put it in perspective, in the highest scoring season of his career to this point, which was the 2019-2020 year, he was 11.6. And as an assist guy, once again, he's always been a part-time player in the past. As an assist guy, I think it was 3.5, if I remember correctly, was his highest. And that was, I think, in 2016-17. But he's capable of doing more. I mean, I've watched him on the Australian Olympic team and some other international competitions where he was the show sometimes, right? I mean, he's certainly capable of doing more than he's been asked to do most of the times of his career. But we talked about, chickens who no longer live in springtime. And he's like probably young-ish 33 because he hasn't been a full-time guy most of his career, but he is 33. And you're asking him to do more now, right, at this point in his career than he's ever done before. And I think he's capable of doing it. Now, the question is how long? If you're talking about 10 to 14 games, no problem. What are you talking about? If it's 30 games, now I'm starting to get worried.
Right.
We may have to do something here about this. Hopefully it won't be 30 games. If it's 10 to 14,
Bill, that's an interesting thing that you bring up there because have we forgot about the age of the Nets? We always bring about the age of
I'm very much aware of that.
Oh, he just made a spring chicken reference. I caught it. It was well done, too. Chickens that no longer live in spring was great. Yeah, no, we appreciate that. It's nothing compared to what's happening in Los Angeles, but
no,
it is something to reference. It is something to reference.
Yeah, no, that's nobody's catching them there. I mean, good Lord. As I mentioned before, they're an unstoppable killing machine in 2013. That's this but it is, of course, not 2013. But the can they piece it together, right? The answer is yes, but right. That's what I'm saying. If you're talking about 10 to 14 games, whatever, what are we talking about? No problem. If it's about 30 games, that's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
Well, little college football guys.
Let's do it.
Yes, please.
I've been waiting.
Let's talk about. Let's see. What was the first thing that I had for us to talk about? Let's talk about this Georgia nose tackle here.
Oh boy.
We've all had our representative. I mean, Chase Young was, not too long ago, Heisman Trophy candidate. But even and everybody knows I'm a Buckeye fan. But when I look at this kid here, this Jordan Davis, he seems to be a guy in a class of his own. If they made a movie about what's the guy, the blind, was it Blind Side?
Yeah, Michael Orr.
Yeah. Then they should definitely, there should be somebody writing a script for this kid here. But Bill, I know you scouted him, so come on, bring out the big board here. What's going on?
Well, so it's almost too easy, right? He is a enormous human being, but he's not just an enormous human being. And that's the thing you love, is that he's also a very active person. He's listed at 6'6". He's probably not quite 6'6", but he's probably, I think he's more than 330. He is. Well, yeah, I feel very confident that he's getting cheated. He's getting cheated on the weight. He's upwards of, I promise you, he's upwards of the 330. But the things that you love about him, if you're watching, if you're scouting him, things you like about him is he plays a decent number of snaps for a guy that size, first of all, right? He's, he had 7 tackles in 2018 against LSU. In 2020, he had 3 quarterback pressures, like 3 times he rushed, pressured the quarterback, got close to the quarterback against Cincinnati. He's a guy that, he's very disruptive. He's not just a guy that takes up space, even though he does take up a lot of space. He's not just a guy that takes up space. He's going to give you some stuff. This year he had 5 tackles against Auburn. He had a very impactful, memorable sack against Clemson that anyone who watched that game came away thinking, oh my God. First of all, shout out to DJ Ungulele for getting up. But it's, when he hits you, you've been hit. There's no 2 ways around it. A lot of what he does doesn't show up. 18 total tackles. It doesn't sound like a lot, even for a guy that plays inside. But he creates so much disruption that doesn't really show up. 1.5 sacks is pretty good for a guy that is double and, at least double teamed. And you have to. If you don't at least double team him, what are you doing? Because he's just going to walk. There's no one person in college football, and probably not one person in pro football, who can consistently block him by themselves. You've got to help out. Otherwise, he's going to be wrecking your everything. He wrecks the run game. He's going to wreck your quarterback. He's going to wreck everything. So he forces you to double team him, and sometimes double team plus. Maybe you hold it a running back to, bounce off of him as well. But he has a chance to be. Well, he's going to be. Anything short of an injury or a felony conviction or something crazy, he's going to be the first interior defensive player off the board. Now, Kayvon Thibodeau is my number 1 overall ranked prospect, but this guy is by far, the highest rated guy inside.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I think his reward is going to come on Sundays. Well, no, his reward is going to come when his agent shows him a contract from a team, potentially one that practices in Allen Park, Michigan. But that's another SPORTSKRIB. The answer to your question is no. The Heisman Trophy is a quarterback award unless you are an exceptional receiver or running back.
Yep.
You have to be otherworldly if you don't play those 3 positions.
Correct.
You better be a defensive back that plays receiver part-time and returns kicks and does commercials, or like a wide receiver that just dominates games, like the kid from Alabama, right? I think you have to be special. If there's a quarterback that's good, and I don't even know if there is this year. Bill can do the quarterback depth chart another day. Pickett is a guy I've seen twice and liked. I don't even know what Spencer Rattler is. We're not doing that though. So to answer your question is, this is a if you're a decent quarterback, you're getting it. If there's no decent quarterback and you're a really good running back, Kenneth Walker III, you can get it. Or if you are a special receiver, a defensive lineman is not winning this award. That's not going to happen in a single year. So it's not. And there's an award named for them. It's named after, I don't know, Bronco Nagurski or somebody. There's an award for that kid. I don't know which one it is, but his reward will come the day his agent sits him and his mom and dad down and puts his piece of paper in front of him and says, "You see all them zeros? Yep. That's how life is now. Sign the bottom of this thing." That's his trophy. He'll put that on the mantle, frame that, put that where you want to put the Heisman. Defensive lineman not winning the Heisman.
And Bama goes back to number 3. What do you think, Demetrius?
They're Bama, because they're Bama, right? And they didn't pull a Clemson. Clemson got pushed down by the bully. Then the bully kicked him in the face. Then they reached in his pocket and took his lunch money. And Clemson is just laying on the ground crying. That's not what Alabama does. So Alabama. We're not dumb enough to think, oh, Alabama's done. Right? We saw the game. We saw how they lost, like on the road to a team that played a really good game that day. There is a difference between that team lost and that team is now bad. They're still Alabama. And as long as I should know all of Nick Saban's names, but I don't, I'm going to guess it's Nicholas something Saban. Nicholas Winfred Saban, whatever it is.
That's not correct, but I think I might go with that from now
on.
As long as Nicholas Winfred Saban is on that sideline, they're still Alabama, and you got to beat them. You got to beat them more than once, and you got to. They have a standing invitation to the college football playoff until somebody takes it away. They're that dude. Sorry.
Wow, was that a Motown reference, Winfred? I'm not sure.
I think it was. I think that was one of the writers from Motown. You're right. That's a good name.
Okay. Bill, you predicted that Bama would lose at least 1, if not 2 more games.
I didn't go crazy and say 2, but I think they will lose 1 more game. Yes. I think that this is a big if they do make it into the championship game and they face Georgia, I think Georgia beats them.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I'm not.
That could keep them out of the playoff. That could keep them out of the playoff.
But if they make it, I don't think they're gonna beat Georgia.
Yeah.
I think Georgia is the best team in football right now, college football right
now. Okay. Okay, Demetrius, the floor is yours. We know what goes on this weekend. I don't know if a lot of people outside of Michigan necessarily know.
Everyone in the Midwest knows. I don't know what Southern Californians know.
I don't give a damn about people in Southern California. No, I'll do it. You give me a little time on the crib, I'll do it. I'll tell them. Here's the thing. My state, you bleed green or you're worthless. That's how it is. No, I'm kidding. There are 2 schools, right? There is the private university in this city, and they think really highly of themselves, and they have some history but there's a degree of arrogance that emanates from that city that is hard to quantify. And then there's the agricultural college. There's us. We grow grass. I don't mean weed. I mean grass. I mean lawns.
Right? We grow. Thinking about signing up for grandkids and so. What do you mean?
Right. Now, make no mistake. We have a fantastic packaging engineering school. We have a great J school. It is a fine university. I happen to love it and bleed green and white. my dorm was called Wonders Hall. I live in North Wonders Hall. And the minute I set foot there and put my stuff down, two things happened. One, I thought there is a God. It confirmed it. But I hate that city and everything associated with that city. Is it real? No. I have a cousin who's like a brother to me. I love him to death. He and his wife and their kids, I love them. That's their school, right? Saturday, none of that matters. There's 3 hours on Saturday where that doesn't matter. Now, here's the thing. There is all kinds of references to my school. They think they're superior. They got little jokes they crack about us. That's all good. I will tell you, not because I'm a quality guy who loves stats. Look at the numbers of the last decade and then hold my beer. That's all I got to say. Harbaugh's 3-3. We have stomped on them and took their lunch money most of the last decade. And if we want to go back 100 years and that makes you feel better, fine. Go ahead. I know I'm going to reference Richard Pryor again. I'm going to believe my eyes. You can lie to me and tell me, oh, that whatever. I'm not a fan of Harbaugh. We have owned them for the better part of a decade, honestly. And we had even down years, right, where as D'Antonio was going out and they put it on us. Cool. That's fine. We're going to skip the fact that they've never been to Indy, which is where the Big Ten championship game is played. For those of you who don't know, they might have drove by Indy on their way to the Peach Bowl or some bullshit like that. They have never been in. We've been to Indy twice. We got 2 Big Ten championships. We were in the college football playoff. I'm not going to talk about what Alabama did to us on New Year's Eve in 2015, but we were in the college football playoff. So we could go there. But for the state, this is the week. This week is a big deal because we're both 7-0. Rarely, never have we both been 7-0 ranked in the top 10. Usually it doesn't matter. One team is good, the other one may not be. Doesn't matter. Both teams are bad. So what? Doesn't matter. There's great rivalries. You hear about them. They will try and diminish us by saying their rival is really Ohio State. And people will talk about, right? That's how they try and diminish us. We know better. You know, I get it. Alabama, Auburn is a big deal. I get that. I know that. That's true. And there's other ones. There's really Army, Navy is probably the best of all of them, quite frankly. But USC, UCLA, Oregon State, Texas, Oklahoma, Michigan State.
They brought back BYU, Utah, thank God.
Exactly.
That's an awesome rivalry people don't talk about.
Yes. But Saturday at noon East, 7-0 versus 7-0. Number 6 versus number 8. This is a big deal in my state. It's a big deal for my school. My expectations were not this high. And truthfully, the meat of our schedule is in front of us. We've just had a series of business meetings for the last, and we took care of business. The real work is now. We got them, 25th ranked Purdue. We still have Penn State, wherever they are now, on our schedule, and we got Ohio State on our schedule.
Yep.
Everything we want is in front of us. I'm not sitting here saying we're going to be in the college football. If we run the table, we're damn sure going to be in there. I'm fine. If we're in a New Year's 6 game, this guy's happy. If you tell me my team 10-2 in August, you said they're going to go 10-2 and they're going to play on January 1st. Guess who's happy? Decked out in green and white. This guy. Now it's a little different. Expect it. It's in front of us. Now, truthfully, all cornbread and Kool-Aid aside, I think we're the better team. I think the best unit on the field is our offense. We are explosive on offense. Walker, that trio of receivers, we are explosive. Now, they will lull you to sleep and hammer you over the head for 60 straight minutes just trying to run the ball down your throat. But we got guys named Halliday and Panashuk and others on the defensive side of the football who are waiting for that. I'm as excited about this game as I've been. Now, we've been handling them pretty well. There's been some good games. We had a rain game. We had a game where they fumbled a punt with under a minute left that they had it won. Trouble with the snap game is what we call that. This is if you're from where I'm from.
That was the game where the Surrender Cobra name or brand or hashtag or whatever was minted, right? That kid with the glasses and the
exactly. Yep, that's it. Yeah. So this game's a big deal in my state. People live in my state, no matter what side of the fence you're on. And I didn't say too many bad things about them. Hey, they're a good football team. They are. And I think I want people to believe that because when we bust that ass, it's a legitimate win. So that's how I feel about that. We're after dark. I checked, James. Don't worry.
Does this put the winner at number 4 over Oklahoma?
Oh, it won't matter. We got business. We both got business to take care of. There's a round robin that's about to happen in the Big Ten Eastern Division. The team that comes out of there, in my opinion, deserves it because they're going to have gone through hell. Whoever the team that's at the top of the Big Ten East, and then they're still going to have to go to Indy and beat. I'm going to say Wisconsin because I think Iowa might be a fraud. I don't know. Wisconsin or Iowa, you got to go to Indy and beat them. The Big Ten champ is going to be a really good football team. I'm telling you that right now. They're going to have beaten some really good football teams. And whether it's your team or my team or Penn State or the guys who shall not be named, whoever comes out is going to be, they're going to deserve a shot to go and play the big boys.
Yeah. Bill, the team that Oregon beat is not the same team that is Ohio State now. We've learned we have
that's true of all
defense. Not only that, but hey, the young freshman quarterback, I think he's starting to learn the playbook. He's starting to get comfortable with that Ohio State offense. So, what do you think after 9 overtimes last week? You think that Penn State defense is going to be ready for Ohio State?
Well, it won't matter. I think that they will. The one thing I will give that team is they will play hard and they will play well. But they just don't have enough stuff. I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about what they're doing or not doing at the quarterback position. If this game turns to a shootout, that's it. They're done. They just don't have the kind of quarterback that allows you to successfully make a shootout interesting, right? They don't have the right kinds of – they've got the right everything else. I mean, they've got running backs, receivers. Their quarterback is an interesting guy to watch, and he's even had a couple of he's had a couple of great games. How, I don't know. If you just watch him and you're thinking, this guy's the starting quarterback at Penn State? Like, you keep asking, how? And then you see him play like in an actual game where there's actual stuff going on. It's like, okay, maybe I sold him short. But in the games where you have to have it, where you have to have it, then it's like, oh, that's why I didn't like him, right? It comes back to, right? Because you start to doubt yourself after a while. It's like when he had a couple of great games early in the year, it's like, maybe I'm wrong about Sean Clifford. Nope. I was right.
I am not wrong about Sean Clifford.
C.J. Stroud is a budding superstar. They've got running backs. I mean, Trayvon Henderson is, good God. And they've got a bunch of other really good running backs. I think Henderson might be the second best running back in the Big Ten. Blake Corum is probably the third best running back in the Big Ten. And that kid, Hassan, what's his name, who backs up Corum, might be the fourth best running back in the Big Ten.
Right.
The really good running backs are all kind of clustered, it seems, at certain schools. But Ohio State just has too much. They've got too much. There's too much of everything for Penn State. And, yeah, it doesn't help that they came off of a psychologically crushing loss. But
seriously, yeah.
Even without that, that's a tough team. I mean, they're both tough teams, but Ohio State's depth of talent is just superior at every position except the defensive backfield. I do not like Ohio State's secondary. I know that they tried to call themselves DBU for a little while. LSU wants to, talk to them about that. A few other schools want to talk to them about that. But I mean, if there was a doubt about it, this year should have shut that down. They've gotten better. Don't get me wrong, but I'm still not really sold on that secondary. I still think they can be had, but Sean Clifford is not the one to have them. So they'll be okay.
Yep, agree.
Gentlemen, we all know that the college rankings come out next week for the playoffs. Bill, who would be your top four right now?
My top 4 right now would be Georgia, Oklahoma, Cincinnati, and Ohio. Not Ohio State. I mean, and I just said them
Nicholas Winfred Saban.
Yeah, actually not them.
Really?
I have them just outside the top 4.
He's picking. Remember, he said Alabama's going to lose another game.
Yeah. Well, so he's got Georgia, Cincinnati, Oklahoma, and
hold on.
Not those guys, hopefully.
Hold on. Not Oklahoma State. Who else did I have? Hold on. Luckily, I posted them. Give me a second. I posted.
I assumed Alabama, or it has to be Ohio State then, right? It's not Ohio State?
It is not. Hold on. It might be your guys, actually.
Oh, I'll take it if it's my guys. Just not them. I'm fine wherever we are. I'm putting us there on principle.
Well, but yeah, let me see. I posted it.
Yeah, I'm interested who his 4 team is. Sorry.
In fact, I posted an entire top 25.
Oh, nice.
I probably should have I put it on Slack, and then I didn't open Slack.
That's all right. So, I agree with those 3, but I still believe in Nicholas Winfred Saban. So Alabama's my 4th. I think it's pretty much chalk the way it is. I would have Oklahoma 3 and Alabama 4. I don't know if it's like that in the rankings. We would be 5, kind of peeking in the window, knocking on the door kind of thing. But I will not sleep on Ohio State though. But we have to play them, so we'll get an opportunity to prove it. They worry me more than anybody else.
Wake Forest is being slept on.
Wake Forest got to prove it. They're not being slept on. They just have to prove it. I got you. Yeah, they're where they are, and they're good. They're in a position where if they run the table, I don't know how you don't put them there. You know.
Well, who should they be afraid of in the Atlantic Coast Conference? Who's the big bad wolf?
Nobody.
I mean, I know we're not used to taking Wake Forest seriously. I get that. But I've watched so much ACC football, trying to find, right, the team that's going to be, I mean, could Pitt do it, right? I mean, there's a bunch of teams we talk about, but not a single of them said to me, oh, this team's way better than Wake Forest. I haven't seen that team yet. Virginia is interesting, but they're up and down. And speaking of people,
they handle Virginia pretty soundly.
That's the point I'm making.
So, Bill, who was number 4?
Oh, right. Thank you.
We got off track. That was my fault. We got off track. I'll go ahead and go through my 4. I still think Georgia is the best team in the country, and this all could be moot. I don't know how you're going to beat them, but we got to play it out because we got to play it out. It's fun. So Cincinnati has grown on me. Quite frankly, I hope we can get the 3 so we get Cincinnati in the playoffs because I like from a matchup standpoint, Michigan State and Cincinnati would be a good game. Cincinnati is my 2. Honestly, I like Alabama more than Oklahoma. So Alabama's my 3 and Oklahoma's my 4. Okay, I think we lost Bill. That's cool. He'll be back. I think it's tough though to me because one loss doesn't make Alabama any less Alabama. And I watched that game. I watched the bulk of that game, and I don't watch other games that much. And A&M played really good football that day. Alabama made a couple of mistakes. A&M capitalized. So it wasn't like Alabama got manhandled by somebody. They didn't. A&M played a really good game, and on a given day, if a team plays a really good game and you're a little sloppy and you make a couple mistakes, you can be beaten. And that's all that was. But Alabama's problem is Georgia. I think they're going to end up taking another loss, and that's going to push Alabama out of the 4. And that's my hope. Michigan State somehow runs the table, wins the Big Ten. That's easy. His question about Wake Forest is simple. Clemson was supposed to be good, and their opportunity would have came when they go to Clemson later this year. Now, if they go to North Carolina and beat North Carolina and then go down to Clemson, even though Clemson is the new Clemson, and beat them, we're going to have to talk about them. Because Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State are going to take care of each other. 2 of those 3 guys aren't going to be in the conversation anymore. They're going to take care of themselves just by nature of playing each other in a round robin. Somebody's getting 2 losses. Somebody's going to get another loss. That could be a couple 1-loss teams and a 2-loss team by the end of the day. So Wake Forest might have a path there. Their real hope, what Wake Forest needs is for Cincinnati to lose. They need somehow for Cincinnati to lose. And so they can then run up in there and say, look, we are unbeaten ACC champs. It's going to be tough to keep an unbeaten ACC champ out of the college football playoff, particularly if Alabama's got 2 losses. Now, if Alabama somehow beats Georgia, then it's a cluster. 1 loss, Alabama beat Georgia. Now, what? And Georgia's got a loss, but it's to Alabama. Cincy's unbeaten. Oklahoma's unbeaten. That's the problem. Oklahoma likely run the table. Cincinnati likely run the table. Georgia likely run the table. There's about 5 teams competing for 1 spot. And I don't even think Oklahoma deserves it. I put a 1-loss Ohio State team that's beaten Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State. I put them over Oklahoma. So because I don't love Oklahoma. Cincinnati, people have just decided that they're getting in. People jumped on the bus. Now if they run the table, you can't drop them. They're already at 2. Georgia is in, short of a beatdown by Alabama or something we don't see happening. So 2 of those spots are gone. If Oklahoma goes unbeaten in the Big 12, the rules, won't allow you to not take them. So then there's a bunch of teams battling for 1 spot. It's what makes it great. I don't know if it's going to matter because I don't know if any of them can beat Georgia, but it does it makes for great conversation.
Gentlemen, if you got a little money hanging around, maybe under the pillowcase or somewhere, you can book it today, with the 28th of October.
Yep.
Title game, Georgia against Ohio State.
I feel your confidence. I feel your confidence.
National champs, Ohio State.
All right. I feel your confidence. I don't push back.
Book it, Daniel.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk the NFL. Now, we always consider this a joke, and every year we talk about it, it's almost, I don't know, instead of calling it the Andy Rooney rule, maybe we should call it the Mickey Rooney rule. But anyway, the NFL says they're going to pay more attention to it this year, and they're going to enact new enhancements to make sure of this next hiring cycle that there's at least 1 minority candidate that's not within the organization to be interviewed. Okay. I'm saying it's smoke and mirrors. What's your thoughts, Demetrius?
Smoke and mirrors is nice. That's a nice way for you to put it. I hate to keep using your line, but this is them peeing on our hat and telling us it's raining. Here's the deal, and I'm not even trying to do your socially conscious show right now. I wish I could, but Mondays are just bad. I can't do them. This is a bunch of old white dudes, for the most part, telling their mouthpiece, who, as much as I like Raj, is in point of fact an old white man.
Yes.
Telling us that this group of old white men realize they've been acting like old white men and violating this rule designed to help black folks. So now they're going to police themselves. The group of old white men is going to rewrite the rules that they wrote because they realize they've been acting like a bunch of old white men. And we supposed to buy this. Okay. So I will contend. I believe myself to be a smart man. I believe Bill Carroll's likely smarter than me. I'm okay with that because I think Bill's pretty smart. I know you're smart. What the hell? What? I'm sorry. And maybe I don't understand this. I'm granting that this could be me simplifying this way too much. Because why would you do this? You could have done this anytime. You have never been a league that has said, we want to be righteous. We want to be out in front in morality and doing the right. No, you get dragged kicking and screaming into every century, everything. They still haven't renamed the Washington football team, right? You know why I think? I'm going to let Bill talk about his boy. I think he still is holding out hope that he can someday bring back that name. I think honestly, he doesn't want to settle on a new name because he still believes somehow. First of all, I don't know why he owns that team, but I'm going to let Bill save that one. So this to me smacks as we tried to okie doke y'all. Y'all didn't fall for it. So we going to revise the okie doke and try again. That's what I feel like this is. And I don't think I care. I believe the cream rises to the top. We are a people who have always overcome these bullshit obstacles. And the best of the best will first of all, God don't like ugly. So fine. I don't even want to work for your crappy organization if you don't want to interview me. Fine. That's the job I don't want. The Steelers don't have a problem. The rule is named after them for a reason because they get it, right? I would say positive things about my own team who hired Jim Caldwell, and they have a black general manager right now. We ain't the problem. I will say that. I mean, we ain't got to win either, and I don't know if there's a correlation or not, but this is the Jerry Joneses of the world, and these, I don't know how you can tell 70-year-old white billionaires that they need to be fairer to black folks. Why do we think that's going to work? I don't know. We'll see. I don't buy it yet. So,
but Bill, it's the rule.
It is the rule. You are correct. So the things that jumped out at me. Plus one other, and once again, I know they haven't, gotten to the meat of the schedule, but Kentucky people, no one seems to be talking about them either. They're just plugging along.
Kentucky's your 4 that you're rounding out?
No,
I want to hear your Rooney Rule thing, but I also want to know your 4th team.
Yeah. So, I was Georgia. Then I was
Cincinnati.
I was Oklahoma, Cincinnati.
Okay.
And then I had Michigan State, Michigan, Alabama.
Nice. I was hoping we were.
We only needed 4.
Right. So the answer is Michigan State for those who weren't paying attention. We're 4. Now, I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this Rooney Rule crap.
Well, the problem isn't having a Rooney Rule or having a whatever you want to call it rule, right? That's not the problem. The problem, as always with these things, is always application of the legislation, right? If everyone followed the laws, our laws would work, right? That's the issue. Isn't the things that are written. The issue isn't the things that are designed, the thoughts that people have, or the intentions. Generally, intentions are usually good, more often than not. The issue is always when you get in the real world and you're having to make this thing work. There's something in the world called implicit bias, and I don't know how deeply we want to go down this rabbit hole. But this is not just football. This is in every place where employers are trying to hire people for leadership positions. They tend to want people that remind them of themselves.
Yeah.
Now, does someone have to look like you to remind you of yourself? No. Does it make it easier for some people to be comfortable with putting someone in a leadership position? It appears the answer is yes. If that person reminds them of themselves, not just mentally, but hey, you look a little bit like young me too, right? That seems to help. When there's this, oh, your dad pledged such and such, my dad pledged such and such, right? The NFL is chock full of nepotism. Just if you get super bored sometime, look at the bios of coaches and front office personnel of every NFL franchise. And I'm going to say that I bet you $1 to a donut that above 40% of them can be connected by either blood or marriage directly to someone else who works in the NFL. Try it out sometime. I'm not saying Steve Belichick isn't a terrific coach, but I'm willing to bet it helped him when the interview came around for that position with the Patriots that his name was Steve Belichick Jr. or the third or whatever he is.
I got a perfect talk for that. So don't go too far with that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't go too far. But the point is that the NFL encourages nepotism, right? Unlike almost every other large, successful business you can think of. Well, let me take that back. There's a lot of large businesses that also engage, in a lot of nepotism too. But this one does it so often, and they celebrate it, right? Football is family, all too literally. I mean, did Scott Ireland deserve the positions that he's had? Maybe. But I promise you, it didn't hurt that he married Bill Parcells' daughter.
Right.
There's a bunch of dudes in the NFL who fell up into their positions. So to me, I mean, there's no one magic bullet, but if you said each team is assigned, they have all these things for X players, right? If each team is assigned each year, they have one guy that his career is ending. And if the guy says, I want to work in the front office, they're required for at least 2 years, right? They don't have to pay him some exorbitant salary. They just have to, pay him what they're paying their son-in-law or whoever it is they've been, giving these jobs to instead. Pay him whatever you would have been paying little Bobby or whoever, and give them 2 years. 2 years. I'm not saying you have to keep them forever, but give them 2 years to really learn a little bit of the ins and outs. You're allowed at that point, if you don't like them, to jettison them or whatever. But now they've been inside. They've seen how to get there and a little bit about how it works. And some people will realize, oh my God, this guy's really good, right? And they'll keep their, 2-year guy. I'll have to figure out a name for this program. Maybe we'll name it after Fritz Pollard. Maybe we'll name it after Willie Shaw. I'll figure out somebody to name it after. But Ozzie Newsome.
That's a good one.
There it is, Ozzie Newsome. So the Ozzie Newsome Initiative will establish for these ex-players who are interested in working in some capacity in the NFL, they get 2 years within, the organization. And, and they don't have to stay in the same position, but they've got to be in there 2 years. And in that time, you can say, it's been fun, good luck to you with the rest of your life. Or like I said, now you can bring them over. And the NFL will, in fact, support this, right? We will allow you, if it's a coaching position, we will not count that person against the number, right? They won't count against your number of staff members. And there's no limit on the number of front office staff you can have. You have to worry about that on that side. But for the teams, and then they'll reward the teams that have the best retention rate, right? So every 10 years, right? We will, when compensatory picks are given, here you go, extra fourth round or whatever it is, right? Is it a big deal? Depends on how you feel about draft picks. But it's something to say, good job. You did something.
And there's no argument about competitive advantage because every team gets to do it and has the same number of guys. So it doesn't enhance anyone's natural advantage.
Everybody has a chance.
Yeah.
Just be good at it.
A great idea, man. That's a great idea.
Bill, you want to talk about Mr. Snyder now?
Woo! Okay. So story time with Bill. So I was born into a family where my mother's from.
Okay.
I was born a poor black child. I was born. My mother is a Wilmingtonian. She's from Wilmington, Delaware. My father was born actually in Brooklyn, but grew up in Surrey County, Virginia, which is in the south, southeast central part of the state. Very, very rural. Very, very rural. And the big sport, when my parents were young people, was baseball. But football was beginning to gain traction. And when my father began to become interested in football, playing it and rooting, he looked around at his options. And he declined the option to become a fan of the team in Washington for a couple reasons. One, for those who didn't know, when my father was a young man and into his teens, Washington was a segregated city. Two, speaking of segregation, the Washington, as my father used to call them, the Washington Whiteskins, were a team that was entirely white, and was entirely white until 1963. So they were the last team in football to integrate, and only did so under threat from Alvin, aka Pete Rozelle. So arch racist George Preston Marshall is often given credit for what I call the brownout that took place from 1934 to 1947, 46, sorry. And the integration came from without, because when they brought in some of the AAFC teams, which included the Browns, which included the Colts, the San Francisco Dons, which then became, what did they become? They became something else. But a few of the teams, sort of like with the ABA, survived the transition and were brought in. The Yankees, the football Yankees became the, God, I used to remember this. But the point is that I think 4 franchises survived the transition. And there was a conundrum because several of these franchises were integrated. And George Preston Marshall was like, oh, you can't do that. And they were like, well, then, what are you going to do about it? So that was the, Woody Strode and Kenny Washington and Dan Towler integrated football, reintegrated, really, professional football. And then Bill Willis and company coming over from the at Maryland Motley, and somebody I'm forgetting, Lynn Ford maybe, coming over from the Browns. But there's so many things about that Washington franchise that didn't sit well with me. And because of where I grew up and when I grew up, this is when George Allen was the coach and the team was still owned at that time by Jack and Cook, who, while he wasn't a perfect human being, oh man, I mean, compared to being sandwiched between, right? I mean, Daniel Snyder on one end and George Preston Marshall on the other, he basically seems like Jesus by comparison. So when Dan Snyder, who made his money in telephony and cable television, and largely due to some business practices that are questionable at best and downright unscrupulous to most, including a practice called slamming, which for those who have never worked in the telephone industry, it is without someone's complete knowledge or approval changing their long-distance telephone service. He engaged in a bunch of business practices that, I mean, there's a list of them. And he made a tremendous amount of money. And initially, when he purchased the team, there was a lot of hope, right? He talked about bringing back the golden years and all stuff, and sometimes too literally by bringing back a lot of older players and, bringing back Coach Gibbs. And Coach Gibbs wasn't terrible, but you could tell he was, he retired for a reason. The drive that he once had just wasn't there anymore because this is a man who has other things going on in his life and is, well into his 60s. But still, people initially wanted to give him a chance. He was a kid that grew up in the area, had grown up a fan of the team, blah, 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 blah. But it didn't take long for those who cared about the burgundy and gold to begin to have misgivings about this young billionaire, right? Who had made all these pronouncements about all the things he's going to do with and for the team. Now, we talked about nepotism. One thing that he did was, even in medical capacities, he brought in his old friends from high school and college and stuff like that. Now, I understand that, once again, similar things happen, but like the official team ophthalmologist became a point of controversy because at one point he suggested that one of the cheerleaders go up to his hotel room during a series of league meetings and get to know him better. Now, the official team ophthalmologist, which I don't know how many other teams have an official team ophthalmologist, but this is another friend. This is another old friend of Dan Snyder's. He has defrauded his customers, not just his telephony and cable television customers, but his football customers in a variety of different ways. Gouging for, everyone gets gouged for PSLs nowadays. That's kind of, par for the course. But, parking and shuttle buses. I mean, he gets you every which way. hidden fees added to anything you can imagine. The charging fans to come to training camp. I mean, just things that nobody else does, right? Even the penny pinching Bengals look at him and think, oh man, that's just poor form. I mean, when you are a cheaper bastard than anybody else when it comes to certain things, now he'll spend money on other things. Like he spends profligately will spend money on some things within his franchise. But the way that he just is always squeezing certain parts of the fan base, and then when you add to that, making people sign NDAs and making people agree not to sue him, if you want to get a job with the team and all sorts of stuff, his paranoia, I guess, is somewhat justified because people are always suing Dan Snyder. There are many, many lawsuits working their way through our court system from non-white employees, women employees, and just white employees who have been at some point defrauded or abused by Dan Snyder and or his minions. He has his hiring of, oh my God, I mean, he does one of the strangest hirings. I'll put it that way. The Spurrier thing, I can sort of kind of let him off the hook a little bit. But, I mean, Spurrier had all this success at the collegiate level. But if he'd asked the right people, he would have known that Snyder was a definite member of the Work Smarter, Not Harder club. He was a guy that was known for, trying to keep his golf game up and tan going and stuff like that. The grind of the NFL world is something that clearly was not something he was going to buy into. And then when they did find sort of, a little bit of success with North Turner, after going 10-6, he's shown the door. He's so involved in so many football operations decisions. And we get on Jerry Jones, but Jerry Jones, he might be a quote unquote football person, but he doesn't know football. The guy played on an undefeated team at Arkansas. He was a team captain. He probably could have played at the professional level, maybe not the U.S., but somewhere for a while if he wanted to, but he went into business. He has a grounding and understanding of the game that Dan Snyder couldn't hope in his wildest imaginings to come close to. But Dan Snyder has more than once stepped in and interceded on draft day decisions and front office, free agent signings. And you would think after the Adam Archuleta, Bruce Smith, Deion Sanders, forgetting some of them, but these were all Daniel Snyder signings. Every single one of those, that his name was a Daniel Snyder signing. And every single, played on a second, Antoine Randall L. Every single one of those was a Dan Snyder signing. Every single one of them was an enormous failure. And you would think that he would be chastened or learn from it, but then you don't know Dan Snyder at all. He set up a sham charity. I shouldn't say sham. Sham is too strong a word, but he set up a charity that initially actually did distribute funds to some Native American foundations and organizations. However, the last couple of years, 2019, 2020, and we don't have any information for 2021, no funds have been dispersed. Zero.
Wow.
Yeah. So, sewage water has rained down on patrons in certain parts of the facility. It just goes on and on.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Snyder, I didn't understand how he reacquired ownership of the team.
He never lost ownership of the team.
That's what I mean. I don't see how he, I think it was some committee or something that was.
Here's what happened. Speaking of shams, so officially the CEO is his wife, of the team. Officially, his wife, not Tanya, but it's starts with a T. Something not Tanya. It's something like Tanya. I can't remember what it is now, but something like Tanya. but she's officially the CEO of the team. Officially. And some minority members of the ownership group at one point had a mini coup within the yeah. Well, as so often, as you've heard this saying before, if you come for the king, you best not miss. They're all gone, right? all those people who are part of the coup are all gone. Daniel Snyder remains, right?
Yeah, he's back. But
the team doctor, once been a personal friend, was the same guy that misdiagnosed Trent Williams and almost cost him his life. Remember that? Oh yeah, it's nothing. It's just a cyst. Oh well, or cancer. One or the other.
Something like that.
I mean, there's such a web of incompetence and malfeasance and arrogance and what's the other thing? Oh, misogyny. Right, that's the other one. That is so intricately woven throughout the culture of that team. They had stuff going on that it was like they thought The Wolf of Wall Street was a training film, right? They didn't seem to understand. No, boys, that's a fiction thing. You're not trying to learn. That's not what you should be trying to aspire to. I mean,
you should not. No, you shouldn't.
Yeah, the things they had going on. I mean, I don't know if you've read some of this stuff, but my God.
I think it's more the organization rather than the football team, because the players, a lot of it. I mean,
I'm not blaming the players or even most of the coaching staff.
Now the coaching staff and that, I'm not sure of, but but anyway. Let's talk about another organization that's close to my heart, of course. And we always talk about, the guy that always gives the perfect response. Demetrius, I'm sure you appreciated Mike Tomlin's little rant.
Oh, yeah.
Never. It's not to say that I didn't mean never, but never. So what were your thoughts on Mike's answer of never? Did he go too far, and did he have a point about Andy and Sean?
He absolutely had a point. I think he made it in. So here's the thing. I have an unnatural love for Mike Tomlin, right? I love people who make it easy for you. What Mike Tomlin is doing us a favor. He does you a favor. There are people you deal with, and people who are married know this very well. People in work environments know this very well. People aren't always transparent. That's the word. For whatever reasons, their own insecurities, their ambitions, they don't want to share. There's things in the background. I have not always been transparent. I am someone who is relatively guarded. I don't just tell someone who I don't know and trust deepest, darkest things about me. That's natural. I'm a human being. Then there are these people who just make it easy for you because you don't got to guess. You don't have to figure nothing out. You don't have to work at all. Mike Tomlin will tell you exactly how Mike Tomlin feels. And there is no better expert on what Mike Tomlin feels than Mike Tomlin. But he has a demonstrated history of transparency that is unquestioned. So if Mike Tomlin sits down and says to me, look, the Lions are the best team in the league. I'm doing a Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast in 15 minutes. And I believe it, right? Mike Tomlin says never. It's never. I mean, but there's so much logic behind it. And what he's really subtly saying is, I have reached a level in Super Bowl rings and accomplishments that I should not have to deal with nonsense. There's a certain level of crap that you are exempt from when you get to a certain level. And what he's saying is, you guys don't do this bullshit to Andy Reid, and you don't do this to, I assume you mean Sean Payton. Is that what he's Sean Payton?
Yeah.
You don't do this to Sean Payton. I think what he's saying is, I deserve that same level of respect, because also what Mike Tomlin will do, you will know if Mike Tomlin feels disrespected. It won't be hard to figure out. In general, Mike Tomlin's going to tell you that's disrespectful, but he did it. He still does it in a classy way. Even then, I thought the way he did that was still super classy. He's like, look, you guys are idiots. Why would I leave a job with quite possibly the best organization? Why would I leave a pro job? I don't know what he makes. I'm telling you, he makes way more. He makes more than Nicholas Winifred does because he coaches a pro team. Mike Tomlin is legit. And when you come to him suggesting you are the kind of guy that a college could entice to leave your job with quite possibly the best organization, top to bottom organization in all of pro sports. So he did all of these great things in one. One, he put his owners up on a pedestal. He called his organization the greatest organization in pro sports. That's how you get promoted. That's how you get job security. That's how you get raises. You make it clear. I love where I am. I have the best job in the world. You say you don't do this to Andy and Sean by saying, I'm damn good at this. I'm damn good at this. I would have said it that way. I'm too good for USC. What the hell are y'all talking about? He didn't do it that way because he's too classy. He said, I have a great job. Basically, I love who I work for. I make a shit ton of money. Nope, he didn't say that. He said they don't have a booster big enough or with a big enough checkbook. What he was really saying was, do y'all know how much money I make? I work for the Steelers. I got rings with a Z on the end, like rap style. I got rings, and I work for the Steelers. I work with grown-ass men. Why would I do that nonsense? He should have been offended. He said it much more classy than I did. And by the way, as my grandmother used to say, when she said something the second time, I meant that shit. He wasn't joking. He wasn't joking. He meant that. He is never. Why? And he's right. It's so absurd to ask him. Sorry, yeah. He was right. He did it better than I would have done it. And I love it. I'm all in on Mike Tomlin. You will never get me to say a bad word about Mike Tomlin.
Bill, I think if you had just turned off the volume and just watched his eyes as he was talking,
exactly.
I think the eyes told everything.
You would have got the gist.
What do you think?
So I have been a fan of Michael Pettaway Tomlin since I saw him as a scrappy little wide receiver from Denby High School. I'm about 5 years or so ahead of him. So I got out in 92. Yeah, so he would have been, let's see, about, he would have been about, so by that point, he was probably in his junior or sophomore year at William & Mary. And I wasn't intentionally scouting him. I was actually trying to watch Darren Sharper. And, I noticed this kid, though, right? Because Tomlin was not the biggest, not the fastest, but he was a tough dude and mouthy. I remember that about him, too. He would tell you about, as you said, how he felt about certain things. And, yeah, he was a guy that he was a wide receiver in a lot of ways, right? But a tough one. He was one of those tough, work the middle kind of wide receivers. He wasn't the deep threat. He was a guy that worked, in those inside areas, those seams, ran out of slants and crossers and digs and that kind of stuff. He got hit around pretty good, but he would always pop right up and let you know, I'm here all day. I remember that about him very clearly. And I lost track of him, and then I heard he was at Kansas State, and I was like, oh, he's in coaching, and then boom, a couple of years later, he's with Tampa Bay. Boom, and I was he's a homeboy, right? So 757 football. So that was the thing one thing that attracted me to him. But every player I've ever talked to who's ever said, and he said they say this one thing about him. One, he's a straight shooter. You never have to wonder where you stand with him, right? The guy you see is the guy we see is the guy everybody sees. There's not 4 or 5 different versions of him, and players love that. Players love that the guy that they see, the guy that talked to them when they were thinking about signing as a free agent, is the guy that 3 years later, when they're still the team, they're still the same guy, right? The guy that, came to see you work out at your pro day 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, is still the same guy. So there are things that you can criticize about any person, and especially in football, right? There's always something, especially if you watch enough football, you can always find a coach or who's mismanaged the situation or hasn't done something the way that you think it should have been done. So despite all that, for the team that is still my favorite team, there's nobody I'd take over him. There's not another coach in football that I would take over him. And I love Andy Reid, and I respect, William Stephen Belichick, and I think that, young Shanahan has a bright future, and we're watching the Packers, or half watching the Packers, and I think LaFleur has a bright future. But I would take Michael Pettaway Tomlin over all of them. I think that people always say he's not an X's and O's guy, right? Well, one, that's not true, but two, even if that is the case, let's say I stipulate that, though that's not quite true. Let's say I stipulate that. Look at what he's done in terms of managing difficult situations, managing difficult people, difficult personalities. And very often we didn't even know how difficult they were until they left, right? Very often we didn't know just how far down the crazy went until they landed someplace else. There were people who were like, oh, I can't believe we got rid of Martavis Bryant. Well, where's Martavis Bryant now? There are things that he's had to do that I'm sure he didn't like doing, didn't want to do as a coach. And people he didn't want to deal with, he didn't like dealing with as a coach. But he did it. And he did it. I can't think of people who could have done it better. And he's having now to manage just this sort of semi-death spiral of the current version of the team. And this team is still managing to win games that probably shouldn't. I mean, they went 8-8, with quarterback play that was beyond awful.
Bill.
Yeah.
Demetrius just told you about pissing on my hat. So,
I'm just saying that Coach Tomlin has helped this team to win games it had no business winning. And I don't think that's untrue. I think this team has won games it had no business winning. This team should have lost 2 or 3 more games than it did last year, and probably should have lost another game or 2 more than it has lost this year. This could easily be one of the, teams right at the bottom, and it's not. It's still kind of in the middle, sort of, which is semi-miraculous to me.
Yeah, right now 3-3 is, it doesn't look that bad, except when you look at the fact that, we have to play the Clowns this weekend, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah,
too.
that's going to be a tough one.
Bill, you talked about all these guys that weren't qualified, and nepotism and all like that, and things that you hear in the NFL. Well, one of the stupidest things that I've ever heard was the coach of the Eagles talking about how the Eagles were a flower, and like
he's saying like a garden, right? You have to water it, you have to fertilize it, pick out the weeds, right, till the soil, right. So okay, let me say this about.
Well, go ahead, because evidently you're the only one that knew what the fuck he was talking about. So
I knew what he was talking about. He's talking about trying to establish. It's back to the whole thing about establishing your culture and building a way for people to understand what you expect and all that kind of stuff. But here's what it really, really comes down to. He's one of those hot young coaches, right? We talk about, who's connected in the right kind of ways to the right kind of people, who comes off of the Reich tree, you could call it. He's sort of that extension of the Peterson / Reed / whatever tree. But I don't think he's a terrible coach. I think he wasn't ready, and I think that's being proven. But that's what happens. They like to hire guys really early on. Like David Culley, I was pleasantly shocked when David Culley got his head coaching job this late into his coaching career, because he and Fangio are the exceptions that prove the rule. Nowadays, people want to start handing head coaching jobs out to guys who are in their mid to late 30s. And when it works, like with McVay and some others, you look like a genius. Oh, wow, look, you found the next, Shanahan. You've got McVay or whatever. But not everybody is Sean McVay, and not everybody is Kyle Shanahan. A lot of these young coaches are just young coaches. They're just young white dudes. And I think some of them will be good coaches someday, but people keep handing them these jobs, when they have been in pro coaching 4, 5, 6 years, right? I mean, Cliff Kingsbury, who obviously has worked out, but was not exactly killing it at Texas Tech. And I don't begrudge him his success, but you can't find a corollary. You can't name a black head coach at the college level who is, puttering around 500, who's going to get an interview, let alone a job as an NFL head coach.
See, you took us all the way back to the Rooney Rule again, but anyway.
Yes.
So
yes,
Demetrius,
I wasn't done with it, but sorry, go ahead.
A flower garden. If I were describing the Eagles, I might have described them as a graveyard. But I mean, were we watching I'm Smarter Than a Fifth Grader here? What the hell was that about? You might want to turn your volume on.
Oh, unmute. There we go. There we go.
No, still can't hear you. We know you're talking because you're moving your lips.
Right. I bet it's good stuff, too. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Sort of. I can kind of hear him.
Go out and come back in. We got time. Don't worry. Just go out and come back in. We fine. He just did the whole book of Genesis to us. I know, but
I'm sure it was great too. I bet it was hot. I bet it was steaming, smoking, volcanically hot. I can't wait to hear what it was. But in defense of Coach Sirianni, that is a team with some real holes in that roster. I mean, I don't care who you gave that team to, they were going to struggle. But you can tell that he's new. I mean, I'm not exactly saying anything earth-shattering. He's new. He's it's on-the-job training. It's hard for every new head coach, hard for all of the new head coaches. I mean, Urban Meyer's been around forever at the collegiate level, and he's struggling with the transition. I mean, he could be Nick Sirianni's father practically, and he's struggling. So here he is. Here, let's hear those jewels, those gems, that magic.
We got you back. You got me now? No, we still can't hear you though. Turn your volume up. We can hear you, but we just can't hear you. Let me see. We can see you. Why don't you put one of the little ladies in the box? Oh, that's right. We can hear you. It's just real low. I don't know whether it's the volume, whether you're not plugged all the way in or. Unplug the headphones. See if we can get you through your computer mic.
Yeah, try that.
Try unplugging the headphones. See if we can hear you on your computer mic.
You can hear me or you cannot hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Now
all
we
right,
can hear
I'm good. I got you. I got you.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
All right. So we're comparing football teams to flower gardens now. Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're doing? That doesn't make sense to me because the league that we're talking about doesn't give you the luxury of being that slow, right? Right. And this isn't like some organic process coming from a guy who's a fan of a team that has never figured this out. You have to do a lot of things well. You have to draft well. You have to manage your cap. You have to sign free agents. You have to develop players. And you have to coach well. You have to have administrative staff that's well. You have to do a bunch of things right at the same time. In this league, thanks to Wellington Mara and him agreeing to revenue sharing years ago, has a hard salary cap that allows teams to turn around quickly. There are no flower gardens in the National Football League. There are the Steelers. They're like the Patriots and organizations, the Packers, who get it right at the top and sustainable. They're sustainable. This doesn't grow because if by that theory, eventually that flower is going to die, right? It's going to grow and then at some point it's going to die. That's not how sustainable success works. I don't. I think you turn this around quickly if you do some smart things. I think you can ruin it quickly. Hire Matt Millen as your GM. There's a bunch of easy ways to ruin it, but there's really smart ways to turn around quickly. So my statement in much shorter form is flower garden's a horrible comparison. It doesn't have to be a flower garden. If I'm a fan, I don't want to hear that. I'm a fan of a team that's got a lot of work to do. We are probably closer to flower garden than the Eagles are. But I'm going to make the bold prediction that we're getting our first win this week against who? Philadelphia Eagles. I'm tying all that back. We're getting our first W this Sunday at the corner of Brush and Adams in downtown Detroit against those very flower gardeny Eagles. That's why we're going to get our first win, because they're flower garden. We're biting kneecaps.
Speaking of biting kneecaps, this Saturday, Mike will not be here. His parents are visiting. Demetrius, you have an important game coming at 12.
I'm going to be in attendance. Yeah, I'm going to East Lansing. I'm not going to make it either. I got to be at that one.
Okay. So, Bill, are we going to talk, or do you want to pass and we'll talk next Thursday? You can email me or text me.
I will. I'll email you. I know I'll be with my daughter, but maybe I'll be able to carve out some time. But yeah, we'll figure it out.
Well, maybe in Bill's case, I can exchange a Saturday for a Monday, but we'll see.
That might be possible.
Mondays are going to free up for me in about 3 weeks. I'm going to start getting back in that one. I got a project ending in 3 weeks, and I'll be Mondays. Mondays won't be a travel day.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we finish it up on the 22nd. And I will be in Vegas that Thanksgiving weekend for the big fight that was postponed September 2nd. So I'm going to venture off into the airplanes and all that stuff.
My man.
But I'm also, I'm leaving for Vegas on the 27th. But on the 18th, I'm getting my booster shot. So
there you go.
I mean, that's just me, man. If I'm gonna get on an airplane and go do all that, I might as well make sure that I'm as safe as I can be.
Absolutely.
So
good man.
Anyway, yeah. So let's kind of move on here. We talked about flowers and graveyards, and we talked about the Rooney Rule, and let's see. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson. No. Let's talk about Brady. Brady, he threw a 600 touchdown Sunday, and the only thing I could think of was the line from Remember the Titans, and that was run it up, leave no doubt, because he still have 10 more games to go, and that's just this season. Demetrius, we talk a lot about Brady, and everybody has their own opinion, but I mean, come on, if he's not the GOAT, who is?
Well, you know me. I always go back to the same line. I'm about data and stats, because they don't lie to you. They don't lie. They can't twist and manipulate and work on your emotions. And to me, if you want to do this, and we want to sit down and have this conversation. I did it on an airplane with a guy, and we broke it down. We had a 4-hour flight. So we're like, how do we decide who's the best? How do we decide? I said, well, you can't just go championships. That because you can get there and lose, and great teams get to the Super Bowl and lose. Let's say Super Bowl appearances. 9, 10, He's in double digits now, maybe. I don't even know. And then we sort of narrowed it to, were you at any point for a stretch of time arguably the best of your era? And like this was a Packer fan who was insulted that I said Brett Favre wasn't one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. And he's like, I think that's ridiculous. Of course he is. And I was like, no. You got to break this down, because I'm not going to disqualify Fran Tarkenton. Fran Tarkenton went to 4 Super Bowls. I'm sorry. Those appearances matter. But it was easy for me because like Montana and Steve Young and Brady and Jim Kelly and Troy Aikman, and I ripped off 6 like easy and said, he's not in their league. I'm sorry. Those guys had multiple Super Bowl appearances. Some of them had multiple rings. Bradshaw, I didn't even mention Bradshaw. Staubach can go in that category. I got to 8 real fast. And then I dug deep and talked. Do we want to talk Johnny Unitas, right? Do we want to talk about Y.A. Tittle? Do we want to do that? And then he quickly leaned back and said, damn, you got a point. You got a point. I can't argue any of those guys. Jim Kelly, Warren Moon, because statistical dominance matters as well. And I ripped off literally double digits relatively quickly. And he was like, okay, if you talk about
championships, I mean,
right.
Otto Graham had 7.
Exactly. And it's like, you could do that easy. So I talked about statistical dominance. You got to have records, right? Your name's got to be in that book. Super Bowl appearances. And were you, for some period of time, one of the most dominant quarterbacks in your era? And I said, check, and double check with this guy, right? And I either went further and said, I don't know if he's the greatest quarterback in the history of his own organization, because Aaron, John, Roger, whatever. Charles. Aaron Charles might have that locked up. So I think no matter what metric you use, my point was to do all that with saying, whatever the metric, you figure out what your metric is. It says, this is how you evaluate the greatest quarterback of all time. I just chose 3. Statistics, like in that book somewhere, records. Longevity is automatically a part of greatness. You have to do this for a long time, and nobody's done it longer. And then I think you've got to have a bunch of Super Bowl appearances, minimum a handful. And the guys I ripped off all were like 3, 4, 5 Super Bowl appearances. Some of them 3, 4, 5 rings. And I think you have to be considered. And there are stretches of time where you can't have a greatest quarterback conversation. It was Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. It was Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. But Tom Brady's name was always up. There was a 12, 15-year stretch. His name's always in that conversation. I don't think there's a doubt. If somebody's still doubting it, I don't know. I don't know what you do with that person. The data is overwhelming to me. That this conversation should be easy. I don't really know.
Bill?
Yeah, I held out as long as I could. So to me, championships are always a team accomplishment. Now, obviously, the quarterback is an important part of any team, but I chalk those up to organizations. Organizations win those things, win those Lombardi trophies. But for him to be this good this long, I mean, for me, longevity to me does matter. I'm not one of those people who's going to say, I just want to look at your best 6 seasons or whatever. And his best 6 seasons are pretty good too, if we're doing it that way. Not quite as good as Aaron Charles Rodgers' best 6, not quite as good as, Peyton's maybe, but really, really good. But to be this good this long, to be able to sustain it is the thing that is mind-boggling. He is the last player from his draft class, the draft class that followed his, he's the last survivor. I think you have to go 4 or 5 years down to find a player who's still in the league, being drafted. He's just managed to be this good this long, and it's impossible to be this good this long. So there's no way to not acknowledge how he's managed to do this. I don't have to like it, I don't have to, but I have to respect it. I have to acknowledge it, and it was hard for me because it's funny because I came full circle. I was one of those people that was a defender of his when he's being forced to share time, back at Michigan. I thought was a travesty. And, I mean, hearing this kid that couldn't beat him out in practice being compared to Elway by people. It's like, well, if he's Elway, then he should win the job instead of, having all this weird stuff happen where he's, in a timeshare, whatever.
They made a promise to Drew Henson. You know how that story goes, right? Yeah.
I know. I do know the story, and I have nothing against Drew Henson. Actually, I mean, I think that the hype wasn't his fault. He didn't. He was one of the first guys to really, really, really have all that QB1 hype coming out of high school and just have it, go completely insane and out of control the way it did. But yeah, back to where we are. He's adapted. He's changed. He's done things, to stay up top, to be on top. He's a neurotic when it comes to work. He could easily feel like he could relax. Now he's enjoying football more than he ever has before. That much has happened. He is having more fun than he has in the past. He's in a place where they don't look down on you having fun, right? Where you don't have to immediately shut off all your emotions. So that's been fun for him, and to play in this new and better and different situation where he's allowed to really be himself in a way he wasn't before. But he's still an ultimate grinder, and I respect that. Like I said, I don't have to like it, but I have to respect it.
Yep.
Well, I know you got numbers, Demetrius, so I'm not going to go to you first, but Bill, do you think that the fan that got the ball and gave it back, do you think that he negotiated a good deal?
He negotiated a pretty decent deal. I mean, he tried to be a good person, which to me always has an intrinsic value that you can't put a number on, right?
Exactly. Yep.
He said to himself, this is a piece of history. And this man has this incredible accomplishment. And I'm going to make sure he has this thing that is an emblem of his incredible accomplishment. This is his. And I mean, let's not blow past the fact he did get signed jersey, a signed football season. I think very nice tickets, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And a Bitcoin, right? So whatever it's worth now, who knows what it'll be worth in 10 years? I mean, it could be worthless, or it could be worth 10 times what he's given. So he has a chance of having total compensation that ends up being six figures when it's all said and done. Whether that happens or not, time will tell. But he did the right thing. Like, let's start with that. Like, he did the thing that it shows that, I don't know his parents' names, unlike your parents' names, Demetrius. I've never heard his parents' name, but whatever their names were, they said to him, when something's not yours and someone asks for it, you give it back.
Right. And I think I'll make mine quick because Bill covered it. There is an intrinsic value to doing the right thing. That it's literally that simple. There's a right thing to do. And there are people who don't care about that. Some people think the right thing to do is to get the most value. There is something that is in certain people that just says, you know what, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it is, to me, it is, as much as I love my parents, this would have been a thing where I'd have been sitting in my grandmother's knee. And my grandmother would have said, they don't belong to you, son. They don't belong to you. And that's all that would have been. So whatever he gets, and he did well. Total compensation package was not bad for somebody who just stumbled upon a ball that didn't belong to him. Right place, right time, however you want to put it. He did well compensation package. I think I have more respect and truthfully, he should be better with himself for his initial inclination to just do the right thing. Because that's way more valuable than the Bitcoin and all the rest of that.
See, now, now you make a good point there because, all grandma had to do was give me that look.
Right. Exactly.
And, I understood, but now, if cousin Hattie or maybe even mama has said, boy, I might have to think about it a couple of times. Right. But if grandma's, hey, I'm just saying, I mean, that's let's talk a little bit about the Texans and the Dolphins.
Do we have to?
Well, I mean,
I'm kidding.
well, since we're already, like almost close to 3 hours, we might as well see if we can
Oh
go
yeah,
some
no, that wasn't about time. That wasn't
questions.
about time. That was, do we want to talk about these two organizations? No, it's a good
well,
topic.
I want to talk about, first of all, do you think that Miami has given up on Tua too soon? And number two, uh, you know, uh, with all of the other mechanisms employed in this Deshaun Watson thing, we haven't heard anything about the legal what's going to go on into legal repercussions here. So we don't know, exactly what terms the Dolphins or the Texans are going to have here. But first of all, do you even think that this trade is going to happen by the deadline?
Not if they don't get a third team, because the Texans don't want Tua. So they need a third team to come in and butter up the compensation. They want a what can only be termed a bushel of picks. They don't want any part of Tua. So what's happening right now is Miami is scouring the league to see if anybody has interest in Tua. So that either before the Houston trade or after the Houston trade, they've got to find a spot for Tua. They cannot have a roster with both of them. The Texans have made it clear they don't want Tua. So this is an NBA style. We need a third team. And if they'll take Jared Goff and a second round pick, we'll take Tua. No, I'm kidding. We don't. I think we're fine. I'm not suggesting anything. They need a third team to make this work. So my short answer is probably not, because I don't know if they're going to find a team that because that team is going to have to give up some compensation. So it's going to take, like, if you're Houston, you're going to want 2 Miami ones and a third one. They want 3 ones. Houston, and they don't want Tua. So what Miami wants to do is get a 1 from somebody for Tua, put that in the package that goes out to Houston.
Bill.
Okay. Lot to unpack here. So for those who are wondering, Tuanaga Kanapela, who people call
why, Bill? Why?
Tungaloa was born March the 2nd of 1998. So if he wants to rent a car, he needs a co-signer. If your quarterback still needs someone else's signature to rent a car, then yes, it's too early to give up on.
Yes, it is.
That was the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, can the deal happen? To quote my friend from Hampton, Virginia, you never say never, but never. While there could be some sort of bolt from the blue and somehow it comes together, I just don't see it happening. There's so many moving parts. As you said, in the NBA, I would be more inclined to believe it. 3-way deals in the NFL are extremely rare. I won't say never. Once again, there's been a handful, but I don't know if there's been 5 in 40 years. I'd have to really research it, but I know there's been very few of them. And it's not like the NBA where you might get 1 or 2 of these a year. You get 1 or 2 of these per generation in the NFL. So that's the first thing. It's not something that most GMs have done before. So you have to have a GM who is, one, willing to try to do this, right? Because if it fails, you're going to look like an idiot, right? Yeah. Because somebody at some point is going to come out, all the machinations, whatever. It's like, you did all that to get, and if it blows up in your face, people are going to never let you forget. 2, there's still a legal sword of Damocles hanging over Mr. Watson, and it's not going to get cleared. So from what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing lots of back channel stuff, that if he was able to settle all of the cases by the trade deadline, which is but a scant few days away, people, right? Just so you know, was it the second?
Tuesday.
Yes, it's the second, right? Yeah. So imagine what kind of, let's say you decide whatever the number is, you're willing to sign it. Let's say even that. Just to get all the legal paperwork and filings done in that amount of time would be a challenge. Even if whatever number you're willing to put out, they say, yes, I'll take that number. right? Or vice versa. You ask them what number they're willing to take, and you say, sure, whatever, I'll do it, right? Even if all of that happens with every single one of the complainants, the time, because it's not like you meet like at a street corner and hand them a bag of cash. This is actual legal, right? It doesn't, unfortunately, it's not that simple, Demetrius. This is actually a legal proceeding. And there's filings and unfilings, basically. Like, so, and you still have to hope, because the DA, even if all the complainants withdraw their complaints, the DA can still choose to bring charges, right? So you have to get, so here's all of the various moving parts. You have to get a third party, right, to get involved. You have to get a couple of dozen legal entanglements taken care of in 2 business days, right? Tomorrow and Monday are the only business days you have to work with, because you have to get this done by the 2nd. Money, and lots of it needs to change hands. And last but not least, you have to somehow convince the DA of, is it Tarrant County? I can't remember which county it is, whatever county it is, to not bring criminal charges. If all of this happens between now and whatever time on Tuesday the ball drops, then sure, yeah, it could happen. But I'm betting not.
Yeah, too much. Okay. I believe you used the term moving parts. Too many of them.
Okay. Gentlemen, now, I couldn't find the replay of last week, but there was a great deal of discussion about 13 points. And was it too much? And it seems like the last couple of weeks, when we start talking about double-digit points, we have been very, very skeptical about, well, it's the NFL and, games are closer. But last week, let's see, was it New England 54-3 or something like that? Some ridiculous ass number. Then we seen the same thing. We seen the Ravens go down last week by double digits. And I mean, guys, when you look at these scores, does it seem more like, college betting where you have teams, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised maybe by the end of the season we have a 15, maybe even an 18-point spread. Your thoughts? Mr. Mr. Numbers. The stat man. Yeah.
Right, so here's the thing. Here's the secret that a lot of regular people don't get about sports
betting.
Point spreads.
Yep.
Point spreads have no direct correlation to wins and losses or the better team.
Yep.
The point spread is designed to drive betting. Right? The spread is 12 because they want you to bet on the bad team.
Yep.
Right? They're not even saying this team is 12 points. If they have to go to 15 to get you, guess what? It moves. And they'll go up to 15 if that's what drives you to bet. In a perfect world, for the bookie is probably not the term they use anymore, the odds maker.
The house.
The house. Even amount of money bet on both teams. That's the goal.
Yep.
That is perfection. Point spread has no idea. How could you possibly know exactly how many points one team's going to win a game by? Do you watch games? Basketball is and guys go out and they put their money on it. And it's an absurd concept. But I think a lot of people don't know that the odds maker is not making any statement about which team you think is better or how much better. The odds maker is making a statement about what will it take to get you to bet more money. And if I got to move the line more, I'll move the line to get the betting. That's what that's about. And that's a great business model because they always win. Right? It's the best business model ever. So I have never, ever used point spread as a variable in forming my opinion about a game. I do not do that because I understand what the line really means. And I don't think most people know that. Like right now, the line is 6. And a friend of mine just texted me and said, think about putting
think about putting some cash on Michigan State. I'm sorry, people. Michigan State's a better team. And the game's in East Lansing. Why is the line 6? Because there are more Michigan alumni.
Right.
And quite probably they have more money. They're trying to get bets. We're too smart to it might go up because from the agricultural college, which I say with pride, we don't get down like that. We don't. We're just gonna go out there and win the football game. That is in no way somebody in Las Vegas saying we think Michigan is significantly better than Michigan State. That's not what that 6 means. That 6 means we're getting more money on Michigan and we need you green and white folks to make some bets. That's what it is. And if they keep messing with me, there's 2 more days. That thing gets up to 8. Your boy might go. Your boy gonna be like, oh.
If you get to 7 and a hook, right. if you get to 7.5, go ahead and
7.5. Your boy is in. They know what they're doing.
I think you're safe at that point.
Yeah, and I think we're going to win the game outright.
Yeah,
but that's just them continuing to tap on my window with rocks. Don't you want to bet? Don't you got $100 sitting up there you don't need? That's what that is. That's got nothing to do with who's better team.
And there's no better illustration of the line being nothing but an indication of where the money is when like a whale jumps in and puts a lot of money on and then the line changes because of that, right?
Yep.
Floyd Mayweather has moved the line on things before by dropping, I'm going to bet $5 million. It's like, and boom, watch, the line moved just because of one dude.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. Like a whale or a couple of whales can literally move the line.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Floyd coming up with with a suitcase full of money saying, I want to bet on so and so. Well, it can take the hook off or put the hook on. So
yep, I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Let's see. Mr. Joe Burrows. How impressed were you? Speaking of another team that talking about blowouts. Cincinnati, the Ravens. I know we all set up very confidently Saturday and picked the Ravens. So as far as that, I don't know what was worse this last week, our baseball picks or our football picks, just because we had more of them.
Well,
definitely baseball.
I'm not doing that badly, actually. I don't know if you go back and check. I missed that one, but I've done fairly well this year.
Yeah.
And I got the game tonight.
And I think you missed that New England game too, right?
Did I miss it? See, who was New England playing again?
He didn't take the Jets. He did not take the Jets.
No. I'm thinking about was it the 49ers and
that might have been it.
Yeah, I might have been thinking about the 49ers game.
49ers got upset. I can't remember who it was. They got upset.
Yeah, no, I got that one right.
Seattle.
Yeah, was it Seattle?
I think I got that one. No, you're right. I didn't. Yeah, but I didn't feel good about it. That's right.
I was about to make you explain you picking Geno Smith in anything.
Yeah. But actually, I did defend Geno. I told people that they weren't playing to his strengths, which they weren't. Geno Smith is a better quarterback than people realize, and I did so much scouting work on Geno when he was at West Virginia. He's a better quarterback than people realize. First of all, he's been with some terrible organizations in the past. This is the best organization he's ever been with in his career, really. And by far the best receivers. I mean, it's not even close that he's ever had to throw to. No offense to Jericho Cotchery, and who else was he throwing to back in his days at the Jets?
And that's a statement. We can't remember.
Yeah, you can't even remember.
Devin Smith. Hold on. Jericho Cotchery, Devin Smith.
Yep, exactly.
Was Dustin Keller?
So all of these Hall of Famers,
But that's the point I'm making.
We could be talking about Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd and D. Higgins right now.
Yeah,
that's the point I'm making is that he spent his time as a starter, with the exception of that one start with the Giants, was spent throwing to guys, most of whom aren't in the league anymore, and it wasn't that long ago.
Well, go ahead, Demetrius. let's talk about
This
Joe
yeah, this is
Burrows
E.
and
Yeah,
Cincinnati here.
yeah,
Because I as you know, I call them the Bungles, but
right.
they might be more formidable than the Clowns.
Yeah, yeah, because they're coming together at the right time. They got the quarterback thing right. Specifically to the Browns, I've never been on the Baker bandwagon. I don't dislike Baker, and I'll let the scout tell you about Baker's physical tools. What I have always seen with Baker is he's like 5'10". I don't know how tall he really is. He plays like he's 5'9" or 5'10". And I might be whatever that guy is. I just don't like short quarterbacks unless you're Russell Wilson. It's tough for me. Kyler Murray has grown on me, but you better be able to do some other stuff special. And I think Baker is a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Full stop. That's it. He's not special.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow. I'm sorry, Joe Burrow might be special. And what they did for him was he has weapons with a Z. He has T. Higgins is not a joke. He's being slept on because Jamar Chase is T. Higgins is a really good wide receiver. He was. And oh, by the way, so is Tyler Boyd. And by the way, Joe Mixon is nothing to sneeze at. And they got him on the cheap because of all the nonsense.
I remember pointing out that all three of the receivers you named would be wide receiver 1 for the Jets.
And the Lions.
Oh,
to be honest, and the Lions. They would all be number 1 with the Lions. Now, that is so offensively, they're explosive. They have the potential to be, and that's what we saw the other day. We saw everything click on offense. If everything's clicking on offense, you got a shootout. They have the ability to get in a shootout with anybody. They're that team. Bill talked earlier about Chicago, the Bulls, being that team you don't really want no parts of in the playoffs, where you're looking at, oh crap, we're going to match up with them. That's kind of how teams are looking at the Bengals now. Like Kansas City is thinking, oh man, the Bengals in our backyard playing in our sandbox, because that's a team that can shoot out with you. They'll shoot out with you. I
quiet as kept, their defense, it's not, a juggernaut, but it's better than people realize.
Exactly. And it's good enough to support that offense, to complement that offense.
And quiet as kept, Michael Parsons and Joe Hayden don't want no parts of either of those guys either. So
exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, the Browns and the Steelers. Can Baker Mayfield afford to sit out a third game, which would be against Cincinnati? Seeing as how Case Keenum pulled out a win last week, this week they're playing against the Steelers. So realistically, it's going to be a good game. I'm going to stick with I'm going to not mention that other city by another name right now. But theoretically, if Case Keenum wins these 2 games, should Baker Mayfield, start thinking about, maybe, I have to get back in for this Cincinnati game. Otherwise, I might sit myself out of a job. Hey, Big Ben's not the only one with bad pecs, evidently. What's your thoughts on that, Bill?
So as was explained at one point, big bank takes little bank. Now, in this case, it's not little bank in the case of Case Keenum. I think he's the second highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL.
Yep.
So it's medium-sized bank. But Case Keenum is essentially a slightly less talented and older version of Baker Mayfield. You're not going to go with the slightly less talented older version of the same guy. If he were a significant upgrade in some area over Baker Mayfield, there might be concern. But he's about the same height, slightly less thickly built, has an arm that's all right. He can make the throws, but his arm's slightly weaker than Baker's. He's slightly less athletic than Baker. He's older than Baker. And the things he's best at are the things also that Baker's good at. The things where he struggles are also things where Baker struggles. It'd be one thing if he were this like radically different. If he were like really athletic, you're like Trey Lance or something, right? Where he's big, strong, and really athletic, or he showed you these things that Baker couldn't do. But he's not. He's a slightly less talented. He's 92.5% at version of Baker Mayfield. Slightly, less thickly built, not quite as powerfully built. Baker, the thing that people don't realize about Baker, he's 6 feet and an eighth or whatever. I get it, Demetrius, but he's thick. He is powerfully built. He's clearly knows his way to the weight room. And Case Keenum is a slightly more, slightly less imposing version of the same quarterback. So no, I don't think he realizes that he may have other things to worry about, but he may have 99 problems with Case Keenum ain't one.
Demetrius, biggest problem or biggest hurdle facing Justin Fields?
His head coach, the offensive scheme, a history of organizational malfeasance as it relates to the quarterback position. Just that. Other than that,
just that.
Just that. It's tough. It's tough because, but that's the answer. It's actually not tough. They need to bring in a coach, and there are plenty who understand how to develop quarterbacks. And this isn't hard. Whatever I said about Cliff Kingsbury 3 years ago, I apologize and take back, because they were one bad pass about 20 minutes ago from being probably 8-0, right? He came in and said, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm literally going to let go of the guy we drafted number 1 last year, because this dude can do what I need to do. And he drafted a guy and he put him in a position to succeed. He had pieces around him and he did it. He did it in under 3 years. And the Bears have, and I'm not some Trubisky guy, but the kid had some talent. He had some talent. And I got to see up close how it's criminal what they did. It is criminal what they did. And even starting
and are
off
still doing.
And they're still doing, right? So, the easy answer to your question is, his head coach, organizational philosophy as it relates to the quarterback position, and history.
Bill, is Mr. Hurts in any better position?
He's in a slightly better position, only in that Nick Sirianni is not as actively sabotage is the word, but he's not being quite as inhibited. But their issue more is, if you could combine the wide receiver group that they have in Chicago, and heck, bring Khalil Herbert as well. And if you could bring, let me see, like if you put those two teams, the best parts of those two teams together, you'd have a team that would be, well, at least a contender in the NFC East. For whatever reason, now obviously Devontae Smith is maybe going to turn this around, but the Eagles used to be pretty decent at one point at locating wide receiver talent, and they somehow just lost it all when it came to that. They've drafted a decent number of wide receivers, and either through a variety of things, misuse, injury, it's a long list of things, but there was a point at which last season, their 2 leading receivers were both undrafted free agents. Greg Ward and Zach Pascal at one point led the team in, in receiving, and Pascal's now with the Colts. But that's not what you want to have happen. You don't want your 2 leading receivers, wide receivers, I should say, because the leading receivers were tight ends, which is also not usually something you want. As much as I love the tight end position, that shouldn't be your number 1 receiver. But they really lost the thread when it came to finding and developing wide receiver talent. Now, they may be, like I said, they're turning it back around with Devontae Smith. He's just a rookie. We've shown flashes. Their once vaunted offensive line is looking kind of like the Lakers, right? A lot of older dudes who are starting to break down physically. And then the younger cats who they brought in due to injury and other things, have not gotten it done. Jordan Mailata was obviously as raw as raw can be. I mean, the guy is from a whole other country where, football still means soccer. And, he's actually a guy with a strong rugby and track and field background, right? So he's very, very athletic, incredibly athletic, but he's still really learning American football. They haven't been able to keep Andre Dillard healthy. They finally had to let Jason Peters go, which made sense because, I mean, the man was running on fumes. They tried to kick him inside the guard, but, that wasn't really the move for him either. Their best offensive lineman, Lane Johnson, through a combination of, trying to live better through chemistry, I guess, has at various points not been available to them, and also has dealt with nagging injuries. So their offensive line, which is once a strength of the team, has become a weakness of the team. They struggle to run the ball. They struggle to throw the ball. But other than that, their offense is fine. And their defense isn't bad. In fact, their front seven is pretty decent. They have some issues on the back half. Their secondary isn't always seeming like it knows what it's doing collectively as a group. So that's something they need to address. But, they still have, Fletcher Cox. They still have Javon Hargraves. And that's the most disruptive defensive tackle duo in football, period, full stop. And you can get a certain amount of work done just with that. But that's still just two guys. They've lost some exterior pass rush. Their pass rushing off the edge isn't what it used to be. And like I said, they have a solid linebacker core, but their secondary isn't great. So you're talking about a team that that is pretty decent on defense, but gives up big plays in the secondary. You're talking about an offense that, I mean, like 8-yard plays are like, woo, we got 8 yards. I mean, they really, really struggle to create big plays or even medium-sized plays on offense. I mean, they're like I said, the rookie, Devontae Smith, and their tight end, Dallas Goedert, are the leaders in yards per reception on the team. That's not quite what you want. And they've got to do a better job of protecting Hurts. And he has to do a better job himself of protecting himself. And then last but not least, they've got to start realizing who and what he is. And I mean, they've headed down that path a little bit. They have a lot of RPO and they've done some stuff. But at some point, you've got to start doing things that he's done before. And yeah, I know people use college offense like it's an insult. But if it works, I don't care what you call it. I don't care what you call it. Call it what you want. But you do the things that match the things that you're doing to the things your quarterback does best.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And the teams that have done that have had a fair amount of success. So why not give it a shot?
Well, I'm just reading up here. We have a couple people from San Diego charged in the White House, the January 6th thing, as well as, of course, the Fox martyr that was shot by the police.
Ashley Babbitt?
Yes. So, Bill, your final thoughts for the evening.
So my final thoughts, unfortunately, are going back to the Washington football team. And I still have friends and family in Virginia, and some of whom don't get it, right? They don't understand why it's such a big deal. And not just the name part, but the email stuff and all this other stuff and the Dan Snyder stuff and the whatever, all this other stuff. It's like, why is it such a big deal? And this is the reason why. There's only 32 NFL teams. And there are so many cities around the United States that would do foul, horrible, unthinkable things to get an NFL franchise. And Washington has had one, not quite since the very, very beginning, because as I mentioned before, the team was moved there. But they've been there since something like the 4th year of operation of the NFL. So they're not quite an original franchise. I mean, not in Washington, but they're close. Been there since close to the beginning. And, obviously, I talked about George Preston Marshall. I'm not going to, as much as I'd love to, beat that particular dead horse, that very racist, very dead horse. But I'm going to definitely talk about what's happening with that team top to bottom a little bit. And the brave women, and I mean brave, it is hard for women to get jobs in football, period. I don't care. Even if you are someone's daughter-in-law or niece, whatever it is, it's still difficult, right? Even it's such an old boys club that even if you are the daughter or stepdaughter or daughter-in-law or whatever it is of one of the old boys, you still have to bring a little more to the table just to get your opportunity. Anyway, when you add to the fact that a lot of these young women have had to, fight, as I said, to get where they already are, and then when you get where you're trying to get, or close to where you're trying to go, now people are treating you as if you're an escort or a cocktail waitress or whatever it is, as opposed to a professional. And in the case of the cheerleaders, I don't think people understand how little it is. I think people will be shocked if they knew how little actual financial compensation NFL cheerleaders receive. Now, you can get other stuff like appearance fees and endorsements and other stuff, but the pay isn't what people think it is. I've known NFL cheerleaders, and this is going to sound like a brag, but it's not. I even dated the honey bears don't exist anymore, which tells you, once again, telling my age. But I did date a woman that was a honey bear at one point.
I dated a honey bear. I ain't bragging.
Well, I didn't mean for it to sound like. Shout out to KH, you know who you are. But the point is, that it is incredibly difficult for these women to get. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you are an intern. If you are a woman, you have had to overcome some stuff to get that internship. I don't care if you are an admin assistant. Whatever it is, if you're working in an NFL for an NFL franchise or an NFL office, you overcame some stuff to get there. You fought, you clawed, you scratched, you worked to get where you are. Even if you had, quote unquote, some hookup, it's so much easier if you're not a woman. And then to be in this organization where they declare open season on women. I mean, almost literally, almost using those exact terms in some cases, where, I mean, stuff that sounds like something from like an R-rated movie you'd see on Cinemax, right? Hidden cameras and, mystery date games. And I mean, it's stuff that sounds out of a frat party. Like they had like an Animal House kind of atmosphere in an NFL franchise. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Like like you would think at some point somebody would say, this is a multi-billion-dollar operation. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. But apparently that person, if they said, I'm hoping someone said that, was like, yeah, you're a buzzkill. I mean, I've been guessing or whatever the conversation was. Then when you add to that the super awful things that he did to try to throw people off the scent, including this, I won't say fraudulent charity. Fraud is too strong a word, but it got off to kind of a, bang or whatever, but the money dropped. And then by year 4, there was no money, right? You add to that the way he's treated fans. And like, if you bring in a sign that's critical of Dan Snyder, they kick you out of the stadium. I mean, it's just insanity. It's like a little banana republic. That's the term I was looking for. It's like a little banana republic in the NFL. And the sort of paranoid, self-aggrandizing dictator is constantly seeing enemies all around him. And so he surrounds himself with people that he thinks will be loyal because they've been friends a long time. Not because they can actually do the job, but based on their loyalty, their personal loyalty to him, and which is part of why the hiring decisions I talked about have been so incredibly awful. And this isn't the NBA. This isn't a Donald Sterling situation or even a Jerry Richardson situation. This is a fair, even now, a younger owner. He's not as young as he was, but he was in his, what, late 30s, early 40s, something when he first bought the team. But he's still one of the younger owners even now. So he's not going anywhere, and they probably don't really have the let me rephrase this. I don't know if they have leverage that would be able to force him to sell, since we don't know what's in the rest of the emails. We don't know but that's a whole other show. We could do a show just on that. But I want to thank the women that have stood strong and come forward, despite the fact that in many cases it has cost them their careers. That a career they dreamed about since they were little girls. And unfortunately, once you're seen as having, quote unquote, burned your employer, you can't get another NFL job because there's only 32 NFL franchises. And the only way to get another job in the NFL is for the last place where you worked to say, oh, yeah, you should hire them, right? I mean, it's incredibly buddy-buddy. It's incredibly handshakey, you know. I understand the NFL is different from like normal businesses, since they don't do normal business things. But there is a line that they've crossed, and not all of them, but probably more than just Washington. We know about them, obviously, but they've been the most egregious, I hope. But the fact that nobody's interceded, either internally or externally, to say this can't go on, and it took eventually leaking. And like I said, some of these courageous women coming forward. So I want to thank them, first of all. And I want to say, my hope is that there is something, some smoking howitzer that eventually comes forward and is exposed, that puts the NFL's feet to the fire, so they have to have, the come to Jesus talk with Daniel Snyder. And even then, it'll be difficult to, quote unquote, force him out, because it doesn't really work that way. First of all, somebody will have to buy it out, right? It's not like you can just say, hey, you got to go. No, that's got to be, that's a multi-billion piece of property.
They're lined up. They're lined up.
I know that. I know. But I'm saying you have to convince him to, give up his favorite toy. But yeah, I hope that something brings that about, and that's my final.
Demetrius, as usual, always having a good show. And why don't you give us your final thoughts for the night, since we don't have the usual suspects behind you.
Right. So I'm back to my recognizing contribution, and sometimes it's difficult because we don't see. Here in America, I had the pleasure for 8 years or so to work for a British company. Allowed me to go to England a number of times, business and pleasure. We don't, over here, I'm going to say watch, although I can't prove it, but we don't appreciate Formula One very much.
Oh.
Right. And so here's the thing, right? There's a dude. I'm always like, I did it with Simone Biles. To me, when you are just clearly the best at something, I don't feel like people talk about you enough. That's what I think Final Thoughts on the Sports Crib is meant for. It's for me to say, you guys need to look up. Those of you who don't know what Formula One racing is, just take a few minutes and just Google Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton.
Yeah.
Just Google him, right? I won't even spend a lot of time, because I'm not trying to teach everybody how difficult Formula One is, how big it is in the rest of the world, how important this man is to people that look like us. But I'm always taking opportunity to do that. He's the only one, y'all. Mixed race black guy who is, I won't even say arguably, all due respect to Michael Schumacher, because someone might argue that. Probably the best to ever do this. From 2014 to 2020, it's absurd. 6 out of 7. It's absurd.
He's doing Tiger Woods stuff. Dude.
Exactly. That's a great analysis. That's what he's doing to Formula One racing, right? And he's got the record for most titles, most wins, most pole positions, all the important records. He's got them. Lewis Hamilton is phenomenal. He is exceptional at what he does, and he's mixed race, and he's considered black like most mixed race people are. And in this world where a dude that good with that type of platform could just chill, like I'm not going to bash your boy. His rivalry with the Pistons were a big thing. There's a reason I don't particularly love Michael Jordan. And it was because he could have done so much more. But he, in my opinion, he cared more about selling sneakers than changing the world. Separate point. Lewis Hamilton in this sport, and I'm just going to read you a quick excerpt and I'm done, about what he said in the midst of everything like a year ago. He called out his entire industry. I'm going to read it verbatim because I thought it was that good. I remember seeing it. He said, I see those of you who are staying silent. Some of you, the biggest stars, yet you stay silent in the midst of injustice. Not a sign from anybody in my industry, which of course is a white-dominated sport. I'm one of the only people of color in this industry, yet I stand alone. I would have thought by now you would see why this happens and say something about it, but you can't stand alongside us. Just know, I know who you are and I see you. Right. That is someone with power using power. That is an example of the only one. And he has dealt with all the stuff we talked about. He has dealt with people in Spain wearing blackface. He has dealt with them printing publications, calling him names that we, the three of us, would fight another grown man if they called us that name. And he rocked with it. And he just dominated the sport for more than a day. He won his first title in 2008, but from 14 to 20, he won every title except 16. Lewis Hamilton is dominant in his sport. And because we're not big on Formula One over here, a lot of people don't know. And this is the kind of thing where it's like, simply put, y'all need to Google Lewis Hamilton. That's all I'm going to say about that. You don't have to watch a Formula One race in your life. Just read his Wikipedia and see how good this man is at what he does. And he's an activist. He cares about other people. He's a good dude who's great at what he does. He deserves to be mentioned way more than he is in the States.
Yep. And it's not my imagination, right? Formula One used to be bigger. It seems like, especially in that sort of low part of like the early spring, I used to see.
Well, you had more Formula One here. You had a Detroit Formula One.
Yep. Detroit Grand Prix. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. You
Watkins
had,
Glen.
Yep.
Yeah.
LA has one, right?
Yeah,
I think LA's got one.
Yeah. LA. I don't know if they still do, but they used to have one. I know.
But outside of our little country here, our little 250-year-old country here, whatever, it is huge in other parts of the world. In all Brazil and all over Europe.
Formula One, especially. You're not talking about Talladega and none of that.
Exactly.
You're talking about Formula
No, and no offense to that, but like the level of skill to me, once again, I couldn't do any of it. Right. But the level of skill to me that it takes to drive these open wheel cars at these insane speeds on these tracks that are usually flat. Like there's no banking in a lot of these cases.
And Bill, I mean, from our point of view, just think of the thrust from coming from and backing you, that force,
The Detroit Grand Prix is still a big deal in Detroit, by the way. I don't know about the rest of the world. Yes, it absolutely is. But in the rest of the world, Formula One is still quite massive. And he's just the best. He has put up numbers. Like we talked earlier about stats, and how I feel about stats. He's not even close to being done, by the way. For the record, he's not even close to being done. So he's going to put up numbers that nobody's going to touch in Formula One. And by the way, I respect and admire that he took his power and he used his power in a positive way. And everybody doesn't. Some people back off. Some people avoid controversy because they care more about selling products. And when it hit the fan, for people that look like us, Lewis Hamilton stepped forward and stepped up, and some guys shrink at the challenge. So, mad respect for Lewis Hamilton. Look that dude up; it's worth it.
Well, I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm so glad. We have a few guys, though not in Formula One. We have guys who've been in late model sportsmen, and a few even who've made it to the top level of NASCAR, which is the sprint, I guess. Formerly Winston.
Still the Winston.
Like,
still the Winston.
But only a handful. Oh, okay. But only a handful. I mean, obviously, you've got to go back a ways. And Bubba, obviously had a big win.
Yeah.
But
all right, guys. Well, let's get out of here. It's 10, 20 up.
I wish it was 10:20. It's 11:20. Nice try though. No, I don't care. I tell you every week I don't care. I do not care. I'm gonna go have a sandwich and go to bed late. I got some pastrami, and Swiss cheese in there calling my name.
Well, hey,
There you go.
I got soup and sandwich calling my name too.
There you go.
It's after dark. You don't, but I do. So, so have a good one, guys. I will see
All right.
you next
You too, sir.
Thursday, and we're taking this Saturday off. Bill, I'll see you Monday, and I will
right,
see
guys.
you
Monday, sir.
guys next Thursday, and
Absolutely.
I'm going to see what kind of plate you gonna have in front of you, Demetrius.
All right.
All right, guys.
All right. Have a good
I'll
one, guys.
see you next week. Have a good one.
All right.
Yep.